Hello, hello. I'm still getting used to my new setup. I've got files open everywhere. Do a sound check real quick. So we got a humdinger. We got a humdinger, guys. So recently I've been focused on the Dark Ages. You guys know that there's a lot more import to the year 522 and everything that happened in the world. The beginning of the 25-year Justinian darkness. The only year in recorded history, and even if you just use a calculator, you go back every 138 years, if you go back every 792 years, you can go back 10,000 years into the past, you can go 10,000 years into the future. They will not collate. These two objects, the Phoenix object and the Nemesis X object, will not visit the same year, except they did visit in the same year in 522. Which gave rise to the new calendar we're under today, the Anno Domini calendar, which gave rise to the Dark Ages, a 400-year period of almost absolute no history. So we have filled in the history, but it's not anything that the establishment has told us. It's actually what we have filled that 400 years up with. It's for anybody new to my channel. It's going to be unbelievable to you. Those of you who have followed the research and seen all the material, it's not amazing to you to know that we have recently survived. We call it the Dark Ages, but it was a vapor canopy world. And reptiles and amphibians grew to huge sizes. Humans grew big in some areas, which gave rise to the Patagonian giants. And we have so much evidence for that now, it's overwhelming. This video is going to tie in the Dark Ages, 522 AD, the Anno Domini reset, the new calendar we're under today, the Phoenix and Nemesis visitations together, Nemesis X field convergence, what we discussed very recently in a video, even the lyrics to Parthenogenesis and Black Nemesis, the song, and the deep lyrics that we know that they knew what they were talking about. We're going to tie in the Great Pyramid, years of Great Pyramid research, and show. We're going to show that the gate that is mentioned in so many ancient traditions, the occult lore, the texts, from the Sumerian times, Akkadian, all the way. It had different names. The EKUR inside the Holy Mountain, where the Dingir hid the tablets of Destinies. All of this. The gate has never really been a place. It's always been a time. So we have to remember, guys, there are no records whatsoever of the building of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. Everything is ex post facto impositions, things that were written over 1,000 years later, and they're very comical, they're very mythological, which shouldn't be the case for a structure that is so technologically advanced. Well, we'll get to that. This is just an introduction to a very complex topic, but you're going to see absolute proof. I'm going to show you some charts, mind explosions. You're going to be looking at the Great Pyramid in a totally different way. Even you Archaix veterans are going to be blown back by some new revelations that I'm about to show. Some incredible stuff. I've kind of been beside myself just going through the notes. Yeah, it's been something else. So let me see what we got here. Yeah, we got so much things to go through. I had an interesting night. I stayed up extra late. So my first official public debate. Oh my God, what happened? All those you on Twitter, if you know what I'm talking about, you can say something in the comment section. So some guy comes to me hard on my Twitter page, man, and he picked the topic and he took off on me. And you know what? I dignified him with a response. Then I dignified him with many responses. And then for 3 hours, we just exchanged. We just debated this topic. I mean, he came to my X page talking about you know, us white folks, we don't know our history, and that all the Egyptian pharaohs, man, they're black, and that Egyptian history is black history, and by extension, the history of a lot of other people are all black. And he's dropping all this Nubian and Ethiopian stuff, and I'm listening to him, but I'm at the same time very respectfully answering his deals like, man, this is all an error. It's wrong. I mean, I know what kind of material he's been reading. I've seen it. You guys forget. Don't forget. I was in prison. I saw that material all the time. But you know what? It's just he had some good arguments, but they were tainted. And when I started hitting him with some real truth bombs, explaining to him, look, man, here, this idea that the Egyptians were black, man, this is something, man, that no one in Egyptology is going to agree with. I mean, so I posted the, you know, in Karnak, in the Temple of Seti, are racial portraits. The Egyptians were very good at showing what different people look like. You got Asiatics, you got Caucasians, you've got Egyptian, which were red skinned, and you got the sub-Saharan and Nubian blacks, Ethiopian black, and it's very clear. So that wasn't good enough. He said, "Oh, that was a lie. It's all redacted history." I said, "Man, this is the Egyptians. The Egyptians painted. You think the Egyptians know what they look like? They had very black hair, very straight hair, and they were red skinned, and they didn't look anything like the Nubians and the sub-Saharan Africans." So this guy just got real argumentative. He got disrespectful, did some name calling. That's okay. I weathered it, and I just hit him with fact after fact after fact after fact. He literally got overwhelmed to the point where he got real stupid. He just got real stupid. But yeah, I had to even pull up pictures of Egyptian slave taskmasters and a whole bunch of Nubians that were all slaves. These are Egyptian reliefs. These aren't even paintings. These are reliefs that actually show the black Africans who were slaves and the Egyptian taskmasters all in one relief. So I said, even that wasn't convincing. So I mean, some people just don't want to be convinced. Some people don't care. But we had this exchange for 3 hours, and I was like, wow, okay, this is my first public debate. And I was kind of disgusted when I woke up. I even gave him, you know, his props though, because at the end, even though I said this debate did not go well for him, but still, much kudos to him, because he did come to my channel. He did try to show some receipts. He did debate, and anybody who is willing to defend their position will always have a seat at the table. So I said, unlike Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson and Jimmy Corsetti and Matt LaCroix and Billy Carson and so many others, you know, Wes Huff, there's more. There's this new guy. I keep forgetting his. Oh, Michael Button. Yeah. Michael Button. So cute. But it's like, you know what? They don't have a right to sit at the table. If you're not man enough to defend the integrity of your positions, then you know what? You suck. This dude, although he was wrong, and he was shown he was wrong, he still has a right to sit at the table because he made the effort. But I was disgusted when I woke up this morning. I looked, and it was all gone. He was gone off X, and every comment, so nobody could read the threads except for those who indulged last night and got they were there for the debate. So I'm like, damn, man, that sucks. So yeah, it's all gone. No worries. Shit happens. It always does. So in my very first published book in 2006, we find out that Enoch received divine instructions. We learned that Enoch put those divine instructions on a pillar. And we also learned that before the word pyramid was ever used to describe the Tower of Syene and the Tower of Seven, the tower being a reference to the Great Pyramid, we find out that the pyramids were originally called pillars. They were called pillars because it was believed that pyramids supported the heavens. There was something about the pyramid that kept the heavens in check. Remember the ancient perennial fear that the sky would fall on our heads. This was an ancient fear. It was born by experience because of a cataclysm. So the day the sky fell led to a whole tradition and belief that something about the pyramid must be maintained, because it was something about the pyramid structure being in its role as a pillar that would support the heavens. But in its role as a pillar, it was also the embodiment of divine knowledge. This is the concept of the pyramid, because it was known to possess the secrets of the past, the present, and the future, all embodied within its geometry, all embodied within stone. In later traditions said that the writings were put on the outside of the stones, and some cultures even claim that, yeah, the pyramids did have writings 1/3 the way up. We don't really know the true valuable information's inside. But still, in the book of Enoch, we find that he ascended into a heaven at a holy place called Akuzan. And we have broke the word in Lost Scriptures of Giza. We've broke down the etymology of Akuzan, and we find out the word Giza, the stock of a tree, is found in Akuzan. The stock of a tree is really interesting because the two great pyramids of Egypt were once known as the tree of knowledge and the tree of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the tree of life. You had to make sure that you picked the right one. So in the book of Enoch, we find that the structure is described as brilliant and beautiful, splendid to behold. And an angel tells Enoch, I believe it was Uriel. Don't quote me, but I believe it was Uriel. An angel tells Enoch when he's looking at this divine mountain, he says, that mountain thou beholdest, the extent of whose head resembled the seat of the Lord, will be the seat on which shall sit the holy and great Lord of glory. That's the chief cornerstone. The everlasting King, when he shall come and descend to visit the earth with goodness. So the return of this ruler, this arch archon of the world, is going to return and bring goodness. This is really interesting because it almost parallels the Christian and narrative, but it adds more, and it's directly tied into prophecies concerning Nibiru. I know people get triggered thinking Zechariah Sitchin invented Nibiru, but he did not. I have quoted in my published books, Anunnaki Homeworld, and on my channel in videos, I have shown the book from 1900. Matter of fact, I have it right here. Let me show it to you. Scholars in the 1890s were already arguing about what the hell Nibiru was. Some thought it was a planet. Some thought it was a phenomenon. Some thought it's a Nemesis X object. But what it brought was different things. Sometimes it brought ruin and destruction. But there's a prophecy we'll get to. I'm going to show that book a little later when we get to the Nibiru section. There's a prophecy attached to Nibiru about bringing goodness to the earth in the last days. So we'll get to that. But if you want to know about the exchange between the angel Uriel and Enoch, you can look in the book of Enoch, chapter 24, for that exchange, and chapter 25 for that exchange. So in all these videos and all these published books, I have shown that, like, Josephus' reference to the Sethite builders of the Great Pyramid Complex, he had written, and I'm going to quote this. I'm going to quote this exactly as Josephus 2,000 years ago wrote it. But he said that they also were the inventors of a peculiar sort of wisdom which is concerned with the heavenly bodies. This is the pre-flood people called the Sethites, later in Egyptian records called the children of Set. These are the keeper of the phoenix knowledge. So, and their inventions might not be lost before they were sufficiently known. Upon Adam's prediction that the world was to be destroyed at one time by the force of fire, at another time by the violence and quantity of water, they made two pillars, the one of brick, the other of stone. They inscribed their discoveries upon them both, that in case the pillar of brick should be destroyed by the flood, the pillar of stone would remain, and exhibit these discoveries to mankind, and also inform them that there was another pillar of brick erected by them. Now this remains in the land of Syriad to this day. Almost all ancient chronographers admit that Siriad is just a geographical reference to worshippers of Sirius. That's the Egyptians. They worshipped the dog star. The dog star is modeled after Anubis, the guardian of the underworld, the Kingdom of Seker. So, we move on quickly. This is all still introduction. I haven't even got to my presentation. This is just introduction. I'm reminding my Archaix veterans things we have covered in the past. So in the biblical Old Testament book of the prophet Isaiah, we read a very curious passage. In that day there shall be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar at the border thereof to the Lord. And it shall be for a sign and a witness. Witness means testimony unto the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt. So there's going to be an altar in the land of Egypt. That altar is going to serve as a testimony. What is a testimony? It's a book. What was the Great Pyramid originally called? A pillar. What is a pillar? It's like the stalk of a tree. It's a Giza. That's exactly what the stalk of a tree is. So we have here a very interesting association, the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. A tree trunk is nothing but a pillar. Pillars were specifically used in temples to display divine knowledges. When you walked into a temple, after you gave your coin to the priestess, a young girl who met you in the courtyard. The courtyard would be full of Vestal virgins. They're not virgins, but they're called Vestal virgins, and the courtyard would be full of them, and you would go choose the virgin you wanted. And when you chose that virgin, you gave her coins, and she in turn gave you an apple. Or whatever fruit they had. Most time it was apple. And if you took that apple and you bit it, she would take a bite of that apple, and then she would lead you into a bed chamber where you would do your sacred duty for the goddess. And this is how the temples were churches, how they got their money. So Amorite, like the Amorite law and the Babylonian law, mostly not all girls, but most girls had to play. It's like a civic duty. They had to be basically a sacral prostitute for the state at least one time in their life. Some of them stayed and did it. Some of them were lifelong. But anyway, this was the exchange at the time. And the man, she would then lead, after they had copulation, she would then lead the man into the inner sanctum. Not the most holy place where the priest was, but the inner sanctum, and there would be pillars, and divine knowledges would be on the pillars he would be able to read. This is the earliest form of what you would call today the Bible. And a man would go in there and he would study these things as much as he could absorb in one visit and all that. And he would go on about his day. He'd feel holy. He would go on about whatever. And 2 or 3 days later, a week later, 2 weeks later, he's not feeling it anymore. And he needs to go back in there. He wants to read some more of the Bible. He would go in there and he would study the pillars. Pillars supported something on high, but they always possessed divine information. This is why in the Christian mysteries you were told that to he who overcometh will I give a white stone. That white stone belongs somewhere in the body of the pyramid. But to he who overcometh will I make him a pillar in the temple of my God. That right there was a promise that those who overcome in this experience, you're in the Kingdom of Seker right now. For those who overcome this experience, you will be made into a repository of divine information. But we'll get to that. So, also, it is not a contradiction that in the book of Isaiah it says, it says, in that day shall there be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt. Midst means middle. And a pillar at the border thereof. So the altar is a pillar, and it's in the middle of Egypt, but it's also at the border. Interesting. It's very interesting. So it's not the type of border. It's not talking about the border of Egypt. Remember, you're in the Kingdom of Seker. It's talking about a totally different type of border. This is in the Old Testament, in the biblical material. This border can only be found in the land of Syriad, Egypt. So also found in the British Museum is manuscript number 7861, called History of Egypt. So two of the chroniclers were Akbar Esmond and Yakut. These are Arabian scholars, the latter having his record preserved in the Bodleian Library in London or Oxford somewhere. So these writings and others were all compiled by Arab scholars of late antiquity, like the famous Musaudi, some call him Makrizi, who died in 967 AD, leaving behind an incredible text that concerns none other than Enoch himself. The text says that a king named Surid, one of the kings of Egypt before the flood, built two great pyramids. That the reason for building the pyramids was the following dream, which happened to Surid 300 years previous to the flood. It appeared to him that the earth was overthrown and that the inhabitants were laid prostrate upon it, that the fixed stars wandered confusedly from their courses and clashed together with tremendous noise. How interesting that Surid is said in the Coptic Egyptian manuscripts to have ruled 300 years. And he ruled over 130 kings and princes over Egypt. But in Enoch, we find in the book of Jasher that Enoch became a king at 65 years old. But Enoch disappeared at Akuzan and ascended into heaven at 365 years old. So what does that mean? Simple deduction. Enoch became a king and he ruled for 300 years, just like Surid. Also, we find out that Surid, what was it? Possible text. Let's see that the reason for being. Oh, I also want to mention that this terrible dream of a cataclysm, Surid in his dream sees that while the cataclysm is going on and the earth becomes overthrown and the stars move from their place, the inhabitants of the world had to lay prostrate upon it. They had to get down. Man, that is so similar to the Nemesis, the Parthenogenesis video. Go listen to the lyrics of the Parthenogenesis video. Because when the cataclysm, Black Nemesis happens and all that, everybody has to remain still and not move a muscle while everything's going on. It's crazy. I just thought of that. Something that jumped off the page when I was putting these notes together. So Surid, having witnessed this vision, this is an exact quote from the Arabic manuscript translated into English. Surid ordered the pyramids to be built, and the predictions of the priest to be inscribed upon columns, which are pillars, and upon the large stones belonging to them, the pillars. And he placed within them his treasures and all his valuable property, together with the bodies of his ancestors. He also ordered the priest to deposit within them written accounts of their wisdom and achievements in the different arts and sciences, the writings of their forefathers, likewise the positions of the stars and their circles, together with the history and chronicles of times past, and that which is to come, and to every future event. Now, we can reduce all that to its lowest common denominator, and we have a ruler before the flood built two pyramids that are often called pillars. These pyramids contained amazing scientific information that was badly needed at a future event. That's the whole reason these kings built that structure. They knew a cataclysm was going to destroy their world. So they built a structure sufficient enough to survive that cataclysm in order to warn a future generation. Remember, Enoch's ministry was never for his own generation. It was for a generation in the last days. Enoch's ministry was the erection of a pillar of divine information in the land of Egypt. So, We move on now. We're still in the introduction. We now move on to Book 3 of Corpus Hermeticum. In Book 3, we read that shortly after the creation, when men began to multiply upon the earth, the gods sent forth many souls clothed in flesh, so that men could survey heaven, the paths of the heavenly gods, the works of God, and the activity of nature, so that they should know the signs of what is good, the power of God, and the turning fate of good and evil things, and discover all the marvelous works of good men. So men began to live and understand the destiny assigned to them by the course of the circling gods, leaving great memorials of their work on earth. Their name remains until the darkening of ages. That last part has dual meaning. Their name remains until the darkening of ages. So this passage tells of an ancient memorials of their work, and interestingly, the Semitic word for name is Shem. The word Shem has two meanings. It means one's name. My name is Jason. My Shem is Jason. But it also means monument. It is often used interchangeably with the word pillar, like a Hermian heap, a pillar of witness. You see, when two men entered a covenant in ancient times and there were witnesses, every man picked up a stone. The men would come together and they would lay the stones, and every single man that came and laid a stone on the deal, that stone was his signature that he was a witness of this compact. These became known as Hermian heaps. They are altars. They were piles of stone. Each stone, in Egyptian it's men, M-E-N, means stone. Each stone represented the oath of the observer. So if there were 19 large rocks that made this heap, then that means that if there was 19 rocks, that means there were 17 witnesses between the two men who came together and made an oath that this was their boundary stone between their land, and that they would respect, that they would not trespass that boundary. That was their border. It was a mutual compact. So the word Shem means name. It also means monument. And the Corpus Hermeticum specifically says that men before the flood left great memorials of their work on earth. Their name, their monument, remains until the darkening of ages. One of the earliest Masonic manuscripts concerning these two pillars is called the Inigo Jones document from 1607. This text was considered one of the ancient charges of Freemasonry, and it was destroyed in 1720, the original. The only surviving copy was found in the Masonic Book of Constitutions. This book details that before the flood, the sciences of geometry, masonry, music, metallurgy, and weaving were preserved because of the coming of a great catastrophe. These children knew well that God would take vengeance for their sin, either by fire or by water. Wherefore they wrote their sciences that they had found onto two pillars, that they might be found after Noah's flood. One of the pillars was marble, for that will not burn with any fire, and the other was latinus, for that will not drown with any water. Our account next is to tell you truly how and in what manner these stones were found, whereon these sciences were written. The story of finding the stones is actually in the book of Jubilees, when Canaan, after the flood, not the Canaan before the flood, but this is a different Canaan. This is like the grandson of Noah, or the great-grandson of Noah, after the flood actually came upon the writings of the giants. And he dug them up. And he didn't want to tell Noah because he knew Noah would forbid him to do it. But this is how the science of the Watchers was found. And of course, this is just a reference to the discovery of the Great Pyramid complex. So the Great Pyramid of Giza, as we've reviewed in many presentations and in several of my published books, it's a type of book. What is a book? A book is just a container of knowledge. That's all it is. Just like the old temple inner sanctums with the pillars, with all the holy, the adages and the maxims and the sayings and the law. These things are put on the pillars and on the walls. And the man would go in there after spending time with the priestess, who was the physical representation of the goddess. And he would go in there and he would study the scriptures by walking around. The scriptures were written on stone. They were on pillars. This is what he did. But that was because in ancient times, when men wanted to learn that which was divine, they had to walk into the book. A library was something you visited and walked into, not something you held in your hand and read. So, the Great Pyramid is a type of book. So we should not be amazed to find this curious passage in the Book of Jubilees concerning the future judgment by fire. This is another quote from the pseudepigraphical text of Jubilees. And on that day of cursing and turbulence, he will burn with devouring fire, as he burned Sodom. Thus also will he burn his land and his city and all that is his. And he, the condemned, will be erased out of the book of the discipline of the sons of men, and he shall not ascend into the book of life, for he shall be destroyed and shall depart to the eternal curse. So, some souls descend into a book. Other souls ascend into a book. And how that soul sojourned through the Kingdom of Seker determines which path they're going to take. Do you see where this is going? We also have to remember that in the book of Enoch, Enoch wrote 366 books. But they're not books like you think. Enoch was an architect. He was a mathematician and a prophet. Those 366 books have a different meaning. They have the same meaning as the 204 books that Ezra wrote. The 204 books that Ezra wrote had the past, the present, and the future encoded. The whole future apocalypse, everything was in those 204 books, and they were delivered to Ezra from divine agency. Enoch's 366 books and Ezra's 204 books, as we have seen many times on my channel, both concern the chronometry of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. We'll see it again here today. What is a book? A book is none other than a testimony. What do we find out in the very, very beginning of this intro? The Great Pyramid was a pillar, an altar, and a testimony. It was a testimony that was laid in Egypt before the flood by the ministry of Enoch. A testimony is a book. It is a container of knowledge. So we move on to the Pistis Sophia. And according to this Gnostic work, Pistis Sophia, Enoch was taken into heaven, where he stood in the presence of God while the books of Yah were dictated to him. Now, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. It's Jeou, and it should be pronounced Yah, like the Hebrew Yah. It's the same deity, really. So, was taken into heaven, where he stood in the presence of God while the books of Yah were dictated to him. Another tradition holds that he learned the holy books of Yah when he visited the holy mountain. Now, Yah is a Gnostic variant of a truly archaic rendering of the Hebrew title for God, Yah. Later it became Jah with a J. In fact, the epithet Messiah, used to describe Christ, is a compound of the Egyptian word mes, M-E-S-S, which means rebirth, and the Hebrew word Yah, IAH, which later became JAH. Messiah was the rebirth of Yah. According to the Gnostics, Yao, author of the books of Yao, declared it is necessary for men to gain knowledge of the mysteries which are in the books of Yao, those that I caused to be written by Enoch in paradise, when I spoke to him from the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. Two great pyramids. One is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. One of them is the tree of life. Trees are nothing but primitive pillars. So, when I spoke to him from the tree of knowledge and the tree of life, and I caused him to place them upon the rock of Ararat, and I set up Kalapatoroth, the Archon, who is above in Gemet, him who is under the feet of Yao, and who makes all eons and all destinies revolve around that same Archon. I set over to watch the books of Yao, to protect them from the flood, and also that no Archon seized with jealousy about them might destroy them. What you're hearing here is a Gnostic admission that the Great Pyramid Complex was given a divine protector through the flood. Kalapatoroth is the Gnostic version of basically the ancient Sphinx, Anubis. Also, there has been some type of power put over the area to where nothing in thousands and thousands of years, because of the importance of the books of Yao, the two great pyramids, those are the books of Yao, because of their importance, this guardian also had the power to stop any other archons out there from destroying that area. Because remember, it's a testimony, it's an altar, it's a pillar full of divine information, but it was only meant for the last days. It is the epitome of all of Enoch's life. And yet Enoch's life, according to the book of Enoch, his entire ministry was for the last days, not for his time period. Somewhere on earth upon a mountain were engraved the books of Yao, which are at the site protected by a watcher, an archon, that protects them from being destroyed. So, the area of Giza, in other presentations, especially if you want to learn more about the Egyptian theology, you might want to check out my book, Lost Scriptures of Giza. It's my very first published book. It's 19 years ago it was published. And we learn about Amenta, the hidden underworld associated to Amen. Amen was the hidden one of the most ancient gods of Egypt. Amen was the Lord of the Two Mountains. That's one of his divine names, one of his divine titles. And the old concept attached to Amen was debt cancellation. Over a long period of time, it became traditional to sum up important diatribes, important dialogues, prayers with Amen. And today we say Amen. At the end of the prayer, we say Amen. It is in recognition of an ancient deity that has promised to cancel our debts. So, ancient Egyptian theology, all men feared the Kingdom of Seker. The god Seker was also an ancient god like Amen, comes from the same pantheon, a pre-Osiris and Isis deity in Egypt. The Kingdom of Seker was the world of darkness and evil. It was the materium. His shrine, which is an altar, was pyramidal. So, through this Kingdom of Seker, one could find the Gate of Rostau and enter the other world. And in the Egyptian theology, which is later borrowed by the Greeks and changed, we have like the legends of King Minos and the Minotaur and the labyrinth. The labyrinth was a symbol for the Kingdom of Seker. There's so many different paths you can take, and almost all of them are wrong. And you have to have a special type of information in order to make it through the labyrinth to find the gate. The Gate of Rostau was the only way a soul could make it to the other side. So, in the only way that a soul could make it through this labyrinth of the Kingdom of Seker was to have the help of the god Thoth, or Anubis, or both, guardians of the underworld, messengers of the other gods. Seker was the realm of death, and Rostau, which was a gate, is a very interesting word, because literally it means the door of the corridors of the mountain. Process that. Those who want to know more about that and see all the source materials and all the different ancient texts and all the books and all the specialists that I had to cite in order to put together my first book, you need to check out the Lost Scriptures of Giza. So in the Book of the Dead, we read this amazing passage. And remember, the Book of the Dead isn't a book. Don't ever think that when somebody says, "Hey, have you read the Egyptian Book of the Dead?" It's talking about a real book. It's not. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, actually the Egyptian Book of Ankh, it was originally called the Book of Life. It only became later called the Book of the Dead, and they stuck with that name. But the Egyptian Book of the Dead is nothing but a collection of inscriptions from the Old Kingdom. And they come from ossuaries and tombs. They come from old fragments all over Egypt. And when put together, because they come from the same time period, they're basically the same theology. So the Egyptian Book of the Dead is very interesting in the things that it conveys. Many scholars going through the material in the Egyptian Book of the Dead agree that the concepts conveyed by the Egyptians who inscribed these things, the best way for me to put it is that scholarship has said, like Wallace E. Budge himself has basically conveyed to us, that there's a lot of evidence that by the time that the Egyptian Book of the Dead was put together as a corpus of material, the scribes themselves were literally transposing what they were writing without understanding the content. They didn't understand. A lot of the stuff was left untranslated, and it was just moved in. And it's very interesting. In the Book of the Dead, we have some really strange references to the ladder of Set. What does a ladder do? A ladder gets you ascend. There's only one thing you can do with a ladder. You ascend or you descend. That's what a ladder's for. So the ladder of Set, the Sethites, children of Set were who, according to the ancient Egyptians? They were the possessors of the Bin knowledge, the Phoenix knowledge. So let's see. This in the Book of the Dead, we read this amazing passage. I have entered Rostau, and I have seen the hidden one who is therein. Amen. I was hidden, but I found the boundary. I journeyed to Nerotef, and he who was therein covered me with a garment. This is ancient Egyptian. It's almost 4,000 years old. It's telling you of a gate, and that the gate was hidden, and that the individual soul who sought that gate was hidden as well. But they found the border. It says, I journeyed to Nerotef. Nerotef is the tomb of the god of resurrection. That's what Nerotef is in ancient Egyptian theology. I journeyed to Nerotef, the tomb of the god of resurrection. And he who was therein covered me with a garment. What do the Christian mysteries say? To he who overcometh will I give a white stone with a new name. Stone to be put in the name. What is the name? Name means monument. Shem means name, and it means monument. To he who overcometh will I make him a temple of the pillar of my God. To he who overcometh will I give him a white garment. What is a white garment? It's a whole new avatar. Why are you getting a new avatar? Because the new avatar is necessary for the new destination. That's what Rostau is about, going to the other side. This is what the entire Egyptian theology was about. Navigating through the Kingdom of Seker to find the Gate of Rostau to get sent out. It's an exodus faith. So one of the principal Gnostic figures was the person of Hermes. I just mentioned him earlier when I was talking about the Hermian heaps. While the men would come together with a stone, and everybody who added a stone to the heap was a witness. So in an old text attributed to Hermes called the Golden Tractate, we find all the sciences of the world, O son, are comprehended in this, my hidden wisdom. And that one seeking such must first be a patient guardian of the arcane secrets of philosophy. These secrets of ancient wisdom came from the stone. Understand then, O son of wisdom, what the stone declares. Them that seek after me will I make to know and understand and to possess divine things. That's my introduction to this video. A little long-winded, but I needed to give you a reminder of some of the profound concepts that we have covered in many Great Pyramid and Christian Mysteries videos, and how in this video we're going to bridge this with some amazing things that have been discovered inside the Great Pyramid. We're going to blow open this whole Dark Ages 522 Phoenix Nemesis X convergence. It's all there in the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid is, I can't believe I didn't find it earlier. So that's what we're going to do. All right. Where are we at now? 48 minutes. Yeah, man, it's so crazy. Amen, the hidden one, Lord of the two mountains. You just can't make this stuff up. Just can't make it up. All right. So I'm going to get up out of there. I'm going to come over here. Awesome. Got some more notes. All right, let me check my chat before I get started. Thank you, Third Space. I actually caught you doing it this time. I never get much time in my chat. All right, 12. We almost got 1,300 people in here. That's pretty good. That's pretty good for this time of day, especially on a Saturday. I don't know what it is about Monday nights. What was it? Sunday? No, it was Sunday night or Monday night. Getting a lot of traction doing those late night videos. I didn't know all you guys were up to the witching hour. It's crazy. All right, so another little reminder. We like reminders. All right. So I do want to remind you about a few things. We've gone over so much material about the Great Pyramid. We know that Ammianus Marcellinus, a Roman historian, he had told us about the underground galleries of rock, like a labyrinth, and multiple levels underneath the Great Pyramid, like a city. And we know that Strabo, a Greek geographer, he had mentioned that the Great Pyramid was white, and you couldn't barely see the seams in the casing blocks, and that from a distance it looked like that it was descending it was a city coming out of the sky, and it was descending onto the ground, which is the optical illusion that would have been created in ancient times by the Great Pyramid. Many of you have walked on a hot road before. If you're looking on a straightaway, a hot road, you can see that cars in the distance on a hot road look like they're floating. You can't see the tires because of all the heat coming off of the pavement. Well, imagine being 30 miles away from the Great Pyramid. It's 454 feet high. You're going to be able to see it easily. And from a distance, you can't see the ground. All the heat coming up off the desert, you're not going to see it. You're going to see a structure, a pyramid floating in the sky. And it's going to appear to be floating in the sky until you get right up on it. And the closer you get to it, the closer it gets to the ground. It is an optical illusion. But this is how the ancient world saw the Great Pyramid. This is one of the reasons why we find a reference in the New Testament concerning Abraham. When Abraham went to Egypt, he went to look for a city whose builder and maker was God. That's a verse in the Bible. When Abraham went to Egypt, he went to look for a city whose builder and maker was God. So, and those of you who have read my Lost Scriptures of Giza, you'll know about the traditions of Abram, and how Abram went to Egypt, and how they were baffled by this stranger from the land of the Philistines. And that's where Genesis says he was. He was 110 years old when he was living in Gerar of the Philistines. But in the Egyptian papyrus texts that have been discovered, it says that a very ancient man of 110 years came into Egypt, and he knew the secrets of Thoth. And he amazed Pharaoh. So Pharaoh had him taken to the chamber with the plans with numbers. Oh yeah, Zechariah Sitchin talks a lot about this too. So it's Abram. It's Abram and Sarai, who were originally, Brahma and Saraswati. But we know that in 820 AD, the Caliph of Baghdad, Al-Mamun, was the first person to go into the ascending chambers in living memory since before the flood, because almost all the other pyramids were built after the cataclysm. Therefore, they did not replicate the upper features. What I'm going to show you today is the upper features of the Great Pyramid, but you can't find them in Mexican pyramids. You can't find them in South American pyramids. You're not going to find them in Chinese or any other pyramids in the world. No other pyramids in Egypt even replicate these features. And the reason is because in 820 AD, Muslims tunneling into the Great Pyramid, thinking that there was treasures because they had read the writings of Sarid, and they knew the Egyptian Coptic text said that Sarid had, before the flood, put treasure inside the Great Pyramid. They had tunneled into it to find this treasure and didn't find it. But instead, all that tunneling and hammering dislodged a cleverly concealed ceiling block in the descending passage. And for the first time in human living memory, a tunnel was opened up. There's a huge granite plug, but they knew what it was. They knew this was a tunnel. So they tunneled around the granite plug. They found another plug. There was 3 granite plugs stopping anyone from going up the shaft. They tunneled around it and opened up to the Queen's Chamber passage, in the Queen's Chamber, the Grand Gallery. They didn't know what they were looking at. These were Muslims that were actually exploring the inside of a technolithic machine. They didn't know what they were looking at. I've shown many of the pictures on my channel. I don't feel like showing those pictures again right now. But this is what they were doing. They were exploring the antechamber and how with its lock mechanisms and the strange niches for a geared mechanism that went up and down the Grand Gallery. They were studying all this. You know what it was. They didn't find any treasure though. And they went into the king's chamber and they found an empty box. They called it the sarcophagus, but it was a box. It's meant to contain something, but it doesn't contain a body. No Egyptian hieroglyphs, artifacts, nothing in there. It was so strange. This is the year 820. These features The Queen's Chamber, Queen's Passage, Grand Gallery, Antechamber, and King's Chamber are not found in any other pyramids in the entire world. I have a whole chapter about it in my book. This makes the Great Pyramid of Giza the Alpha Pyramid. It is the Alpha Pyramid that when it was explored after it was built, the ceiling block was so good at disguising the entrance to the Ascendant Passage that civilizations for thousands of years after it was built only replicated the Descending Passage with the underground chamber and the well pit that goes deep under the pyramid. That's all they ever replicated in Mexico. That's all they ever replicated in Oaxaca, Veracruz state, all the pyramids in Central America and Ecuador, all the pyramids, Lucarmata, Tiahuanaco, nothing. They all replicated the subterranean features. None of them had the Ascendant Passages because they didn't know it existed. This was discovered by the Muslim Caliph Al-Mamun in 820 AD. So many people like Al-Makrizi and then 1,000 years ago, Al-Biruni, they had studied the Great Pyramid and left us writings. We have the writings of John Greaves, Oxford scholar. He didn't really understand what he was seeing. He just knew that this monument was of epic importance. But John Greaves is the one that got Europe afire, their imagination afire, to where Europe now began sending thousands of people to study the Great Pyramid and study Egyptian ruins. All this, at this time, 1/3 of the pyramid was under the sands of the desert. So John Greaves he studied the pyramid in the 1640s AD. He's like the first European to go to the site and explore it that we know of, and that's left us books about his exploration to the Great Pyramid. And his book is extensive. It's massive. So Frederick Norden Lewis followed him. He was a Danish navigator. He followed in 1737. He wrote in his travel log that the entire area around the Great Pyramid was covered in seashells. This was 1737. This was followed later in 1897 and 1898 by Napoleon Bonaparte's scientific team in Egypt. He took all kinds of mathematicians and scientists and all that. As a matter of fact, it was mathematicians in it was the mathematicians that had pretty much, I said 18, didn't I? I meant 1797 and 8 to 1800. He took mathematicians that extrapolated that to cover the Great Pyramid would require 144,000 casing stones. There's that number again. So in 1837, English Colonel Howard Weiss, he was running out of money. You guys know the story. Humphreys Brewer snitched on him, told many how they painted those hieroglyphs in there for Khufu so it could verify Herodotus, his claims, and it's all money scam. It's all bullshit. There's never been any Egyptian hieroglyphics ever found. No one's ever seen them in the relieving chambers, in the Davison's chambers. These guys made that up, and this isn't just speculation. One of the guys that was in on it, named Humphreys Brewer, told on those guys for painting all that stuff in the pyramid in 1837. But you know what? All the books on Egyptology still run with the lie. Of course they do. 1859, John Taylor was the very first person to write a book and theorize that the Great Pyramid is far more than we've been told. He theorized that it was built before the flood, it was built by the Sethites, and it contained mathematical and calendrical information, and that there was divine calendar information that was put into the Great Pyramid for people to discover in the last days. John Taylor was the first, 1859. He's the first to theorize this. But others came right behind him, some of them trying to criticize him, but they became believers real fast when they started studying the monument. His book was he wrote a book, The Battle of the Standards, in 1864, talking about standards of measurement, which we're going to get to in a minute. He was really against the metric system, as am I as well. So he believed that maybe Noah had built the Great Pyramid. He just believed that it was before the flood. He didn't really take his research a whole much farther. This would have been done by a friend of his, somebody, a colleague, somebody who he was in correspondence with, the astronomer royal for Scotland, Charles Piazzi Smith, traveled to Egypt with his wife and followed up on the research of John Taylor. He didn't believe a lot of it, but man, he became a believer and wrote his own book, which was far better and far more meticulously precise than John Taylor's work. Our Inheritance in the Great Pyramid, Our Inheritance in the Great Pyramid, was published by Smith, and it's a pretty damn good book. I have a copy in my library. I've showed it many times on my channel. He shows that one of the main units of measurement inside the Great Pyramid shocked him and many other researchers to find that the inch that was used in the Great Pyramid is 1.001 British inches, meaning that it takes 1,000 British inches for a measurement inside the Great Pyramid to be off 1 inch. That is amazing, showing that whoever built the Great Pyramid used pretty much our standard of measurement. So he got a bad reputation because he was an academic. He was an astronomer royal. And for him to publish about the Great Pyramid being pre-flood, attached to the Book of Genesis, patriarchs, mentioned that it was like a divine calendar. Oh no. Egyptology was just coming out strong at this time, and they sent a heavy hitter named William Matthew Flinders Petrie. 1880, this man went out and he surveyed the Great Pyramid like no one else has ever done. I believe in the past I've kind of messed up and I said to the thousandth of an inch, but actually he used instruments that are to the hundreds of an inch. And William Matthew Flinders Petrie's measurements are still the standard in Egyptology today. His measurements are still what Egyptologists go by. His measurements are the only measurements I go by. He spent a prodigious amount of time going over every surface of the Great Pyramid, getting it all right. We know that his measurements are correct because we have found that these measurements are self-referencing over and over throughout the Great Pyramid, even in other dimensions of arithmetic. And this has been a real shocker. Also, as Archaix veterans know, as I'll be showing that here in a minute, you just can't make this stuff up. But the Phoenix periodicity of 138 years is found everywhere in the Great Pyramid, and no one else in the world has been talking about it. No one else has ever published it. And still, even though my research is quite a few years old now, there still isn't anybody entertaining this. It is absolutely and completely ignored. I'll show it to you here. So 1926, H. Aldersmith and engineer David Davidson published their fantastic book, The Great Pyramid, Its Divine Message. They used Petrie's measurements as well and discovered hundreds of new and incredible things and made their case that the Great Pyramid is not just a divine calendar, but it contains measurements that show whole timelines of world history. So, these guys, Davidson and Aldersmith, they got down. Neither one of them were chronologists, though. So they were already using basically a defunct chronology of the world because they relied on Archbishop James Ussher's chronology, which was the official chronology of the time. And there was too many mistakes. I've corrected all of Ussher's mistakes that I have found, as you guys have known, have been watching my channel. But still, they made their case. This is engineer David Davidson. We'll be showing some of his research here too, because he made a discovery that just blows our mind about the year 2045. So next in line in this entourage of pyramid researchers, we have Adam Rutherford. So in 1961, he publishes Pyramidology, and my only issue, his research is very penetrating as well, and he brings some new things to the table. But he's so heavily strong on the Christian programming and the biblical leanings, and that he had to force interpretations I'm not cool with. But other than that, he's a pioneer in pyramidology as well. So we have to understand that what Sir Flinders Petrie found, this network of measurements, can't be true of an ancient Egyptian civilization. But it is true because it's sitting in Egypt right now, and anybody can go verify this. What I mean is the measurements are actually conveying very specific information, and it's really harrowing. So this is what we're going to get into. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I will share my screen. You know what? Let's see here. All right. I'm curious about something real quick. Hold on. All right. So doing a presentation like this is a lot. I have no idea if I got all my ducks in a row. So let me share the screen. Share. I got this new screen, so I have to do things independently here. This screen's 5 foot wide. It curves like a moon. Instead of having independent screens, which causes me problems, I got one big giant screen now, and it's I'm still getting used to it. There we go. Oh, sharing my screen is going to be a problem. Yeah. That is going to be a problem, isn't it? I don't think you guys are going to be able to see this. Let me see. So, yeah. Yeah, that's no good. That's no good. I'm going to have to, it'll be good for this video, but I'm going to have to come up with something else. I'm going to have to split screen or download a problem of something else. Yeah, the screen's real wide, but I need you guys to be able to see what I'm presenting. So anyway, for this video, it'll suffice, but I'm going to have to find another method. This is Sir Flinders Petrie's measurements. I'm just showing you because what I'm about to convey to you and what I'm going to show you in charts is profound. I just want to show you these measurements are very scientific. He measured everything: sloping distance, apothems, horizontal, vertical distances, combined distances. This man did it all. Did it all. I found it really interesting that the sockets at the four corners of the Great Pyramid are just over 137 inches, but not quite 138 inches. The sockets at the Great Pyramid. How interesting that the builders of the Great Pyramid would incorporate the fine structure constant in the geometry of the structure 4 times. Crazy. Look at this distance right here, 4,554 inches right there. What? 4,554 inches. What is that? What is that? Let me see real quick. I knew it. It's 138 times 33. Right there. 138 times 33. 138's everywhere. You're looking down at the Great Pyramid from its apex. This is an aerial view. And the 4 corners, real tiny, you really can't see them, but the 4 corners, these are blowed up. These are blowed up, and these are called sockets. The 4 sockets underneath the 4 corners of the cornerstone of the corners of the building, and the sockets are measured at 137 point something under 138, which we know is the fine structure constant. Yeah, these measurements there are so meticulous. He measured everything. And these are the only measurements I use, and these are the measurements that show that the Great Pyramid is absolutely self-referencing in multiple dimensions of arithmetic. It's astonishing. The reason these are gridded like diamonds right here is because this is a totally different type of stone. This is granite. All the stuff that looks like gridded diamond, that's granite. This great step is limestone. This is called the Great Step. The reason it's called the Great, it's not just a great step to go into the King's Chamber. It's called the Great Step because the face of the step itself, see it starts 126 pyramid inches. The Great Step face is the central axis of the entire gigantic structure. It is measured perfectly. This dotted line is the dead center of the entire pyramid. And it's the face of that step. This is the great step that you must step over in order to come into this antechamber, in order to get into the King's Chamber, the great step. This great step is 126 inches long, but the whole floor slab itself is 534 inches long. And we'll get to that in a minute because it's important. It's very important. Anyway, these are the measurements of Sir Flinders Petrie, and they're very important to see. Here are vertical measurements, vertical distances for everything. Here are horizontal sloping apple. Here there's like this 808 down here you see. This is the apophthegm because the vertical distance is 666 inches to the entrance of the Great Pyramid. Right here where my cursor is. Right here, my cursor is, that's the entrance. That is exactly 666 inches from the base foundation of the Great Pyramid. However, it's also 808 inches from the ground. But that's because that's an apophthegm. An apophthegm is a sloping distance. It's a little bit longer because it's slanted. He measured everything. This is the underground chamber. This is underneath the Great Pyramid, the subterranean chamber and the well pit. Now, the Egyptians had to put a grill over the well pit because people fell in and there's no getting them out. They don't even know how deep that is. They do know that they have done soundings and they know there's water down there. It's probably from the Nile. Water tables down there. A bunch of the underground levels below the Giza complex, the labyrinth, they're flooded out. All right. So that covers that. So these are the measurements of Sir Flinders Petrie. Now, for those of you who have been following my Phoenix material, those who've been following my Phoenix research, you will know. Oh man, this is such a pain in the ass. I wish that drop down menu would stop dropping down. Pain in the ass. All right. So it is beyond coincidence that measurements. This is the aerial view of. There's the Great Step right there. This is the dead center of the entire pyramid. That's the Great Step axis right there. This is the antechamber with the locking mechanisms, and this is the King's Chamber with the sarcophagus. It is beyond coincidence that dimensions all throughout the structure equal numbers that are divisible by 138 everywhere. You guys know the Phoenix number is 138. Last time the Phoenix phenomenon was here was 1902. Before that was 1764. Before that was 1626. Before that was 1488. Before that was 1350. Before that was the Children's Crusade, the beginning of Tartaria, 1212 AD. Giant tsunami in Norway, all kinds of things. So we have all these measurements in the Great Pyramid are all divisible by 138 over and over and over. So many of them. This is the subterranean chamber. That's the width of the ceiling of the subterranean chamber is 52 inches. That's 138 times 4. The height of the subterranean chamber is published by Petrie at 11 and a half feet. That's 138 inches. So over and over and over, the measurements show us they are divisible by every number in a box that you see is divisible by 138. Every boxed number. Every boxed number on here are measurements in the Great Pyramid, and they're all divisible by 138. You can't make this stuff up. These numbers come only from the scholarly, academic, backed up measurements of Sir Flinders Petrie, which are still endorsed by Egyptologists today. These numbers, none of these Egyptologists are talking about this, but they endorse these measurements and these numbers. These are all rectilinear measurements, and this is what they are. Every boxed measurement you see is divisible by 138. This is all the architecture of the Great Pyramid. This is vertical, horizontal, sloping distances, apophthegms. It's all here. Here's the Phoenix timeline. Every event you see here is 138 years apart. This isn't a Phoenix video. I've got a whole playlist with about 100 presentations on it because some of them are stacked videos about the Phoenix phenomenon. Yeah, if you don't know anything about it, then you're stuck out because I'm not fixing to try and catch you up here. But it is meticulously documented. 3 published books and in numerous video presentations. So let's see. That concludes that little file. So recently we about a year ago, I did a analysis on this book, The Myth of the Phoenix, according to classical and early Christian traditions. In this book, we found out some really interesting things. We're just going to breeze through some of these files before we get to the real bombs here. So in this book, we find out that concerning the Phoenix, it was primarily a symbol indicative of a reality beyond that of the individual, but including him and forming the true basis of his existence. Remember, I tell you all the time, we live in an artificial construct. The Phoenix phenomenon is a part of that governing apparatus. It's one of the protocols in this construct, just like Nemesis X. We don't belong here. We are passing through the simulacrum. They're basically hinting this in this book. So an important factor in the present investigation is formed by the discovery that the Phoenix had a symbolic meaning in the oldest and previously unexplained text in which the bird is mentioned, Hesiod. Yeah, in Hesiod we find out that the Phoenix man, I wish I could go back to that video and see that part real quick. I actually read the whole passage out of Hesiod talking about the Phoenix was a symbol for an alternate reality. It is remarkable to note that certain texts were mentioned in earlier times and then evidently forgotten by later scholars. Various representations of the Phoenix have been discovered. Since almost every representation of the Phoenix has a specific symbolic meaning, its occurrences in art are of great importance. Damn, that's what I forgot. I wanted to put a file together. My Archaix veterans, you've already seen the files though. The Occultus Mysterium. All the old alchemical Renaissance art that has phoenixes hidden everywhere in the art. Yeah. You've already seen it, Art. You know what I'm talking about. I didn't need to show it here. In the classical world, the Phoenix became a symbol of the rebirth of the soul, and later, among the Christians, of the resurrection of the flesh. Kingdom of Seker is the realm of death. That's where you're at right now. You're trying to get a white robe and a white stone so you can be a pillar in the temple of God, which is nothing but a repository of divine information. The Phoenix has everything to do with that journey. It's all about rebirth and resurrection. In most cases, the discussion or mention of the Phoenix is connected not with the animal world, but with the human world, and it can only be concluded that the Phoenix fulfilled an important function with respect to the meaning of human existence. All right. Just catching people up. Just catching people up a little bit. So you guys remember, in Great Pyramid chronometry, we find some really intriguing things, such as the number 1080. The number 1080 appears everywhere, and I've explained in multiple presentations in my published books. I got charts that show it. I don't even know if I'm going to show a chart now, but you've seen them before, most of you. That the Great Pyramid is self-referencing. It even dates itself. And the reason it does this, because I do have pictures of that. So here you see the perimeter of the pyramid here represents 1080 years, 1080 years, 1080 years, all the way around. Here is, that's not it. So if we take a pyramid, a three-dimensional pyramid right here, you will find that a true pyramid has 5 points. When you turn that 3 dimensions of 5 points into 2 dimensions, you get this. This is the form you get when you take a pyramid of 5 points, 4 at the four cornerstones at the bottom and the chief cornerstone at the top. When you take a 3-dimensional representation of the number 5 and reduce the number 5 to 2 dimensions, this is what it looks like. This is your 5 points in 2 dimensions. What's really interesting about this is a Sumerian pictogram called an Arub, A-R-U-B. The Arub is made up of 10 108-degree angles. To make this up, there are 10 angles here that are at 108 degrees. This information comes from Busenbark. I've quoted him multiple times. I believe the title of his book is Sex, Secret, and the Stars. But 10 108-degree angles makes up this form, which means that this two-dimensional form is representative of the number 1080. 10 times 108 is 1080. So this 3-dimensional form embodies the concept of 1080. For any of you who have read my Chronicon, you will know that the Great Pyramid was started in 2905 BC. It took 90 years to construct the Great Pyramid complex. 90 years is 1080 months. When it was finished in the 90th year, it was 2815 BC. 2815 BC of our calendar is the year 1080 Annus Mundi, the old world's calendar. In other words, 2815 BC, the completion of the Great Pyramid project, was finished in the year 1080 of the pre-flood world. So, do we have correspondence with this in ancient times? Because the cataclysm came and people were trying to put the truth back together, but they put it back together in fragments. So we do have some correspondence. First of all, before the flood, we find out that all these ancient calendars, remember Enoch was a chronologist, all these ancient calendars, 3121, the Mayan Inca Temple of the Cross. 3113, Mayan long count that ends in 2046. 3102, the Brahmanic Kali Yuga age begun. 3100 is the Sumerian Enoch Etana reign. 3100 is the Egyptian Narmer palette, which you know of as Scorpion King. So 3100 BC is basically when all these ancient calendars were already formalized for whatever reason. And the strange thing about it is they don't count backwards to events in the past. Every calendar counted forward in time as if they were anticipatory of something. Interestingly, 3100 BC, as you see here, is the 108th year of Enoch's reign. Remember, Enoch became king when he was 65 years old. He ruled for 300 years. The same thing as Surid, who before the flood built the pyramids. Enoch ruled over 130 kings of princes in Egypt at Akuzan, according to the book of Jasher. But in the Egyptian Coptic records of Surid, we find out that King Surid ruled over the 130 nomes of Egypt. It's the same guy. Enoch built the pillars, which are pyramids. Surid built pyramids. Same guy. Now, Enoch's reign of 300 years is coincidentally exactly 108,000 days. Why? Because pre-flood years were 360 days. 60 times 6 was a year in the pre-flood world. So here it is. 108,000 days is how long Enoch ruled. In Enoch's 108th year of reign, all these calendars were done and formalized, and they count forward in time to different events. The Great Pyramid is then afterward finished in 2815 BC, which is 1080 Annus Mundi. It took 90 years to build it, which is 1080 months. The Great Pyramid was built 666 years before the Great Flood in 2239 BC. This right line right here. When did the Great Flood happen? It happened in the 33rd.3 Jubilee of the pre-flood world, the year 1656. So many of you have already heard all these numbers. You already know about all this. I want to read this note right here. A 21-year disparity in start dates in the context from 51 centuries to the present and the base 12 144 denominators prove that all these calendars were originally one system. And they were. I mean, Scorpion King is just an arachnid. It's an 8-legged creature. This is where we get Spider Grandmother from. It's an arachnid. The symbol of the spider being the symbol of the Anuna. It's all the same. It's all the same concept. So we're done with that. So the number 1080 has survived. It has survived amazingly from the ancient world. Here we find that Heraclitus, one of the Ionian, the scientific Greeks, Heraclitus wrote that the world is destroyed every 10,800 years. There go those Greeks, always adding a zero to everything like Plato did with Atlantis. Heraclitus wrote that the world is destroyed every 10,800 years. That's 108. The Rig Veda, interestingly enough, Rig Veda means altar of knowledge. What is the Great Pyramid? An altar and a pillar in the midst of the land of Egypt, and yet at the border thereof. Not the border of Egypt, because it's in the middle of Egypt, at the border of something else. Where are we trying to get out of? The Kingdom of Seker. How do you get out of the Kingdom of Seker? You got to pass through the Gate of Rostau. Where's the Gate of Rostau? It's what divides the border. Rig Veda, altar of knowledge of Brahma, has 10,800 stanzas in 10 books of 1080 stanzas each. Do you see? The Great Pyramid was the largest book in the world. After the cataclysm, the people in India remembered it as an altar, remembered it as a book, remembered it as a container of knowledge. They even remembered that it was finished in the year 1080 of the old world's calendar. However, it became traditionalized like this. It was 1080 stanzas in 10 books of 1080 stanzas each. The Great Pyramid finished 2815 BC or 1080 Annus Mundi, 666 years before the flood. Okay. The four-faced Brahma was under sea for a while. This is in the Brahmanic faith. Brahma had 4 faces, but Brahma was also called the altar of Agni. The altar of Agni was what I just showed you. It was a book connected to the number 1080. But the four-faced Brahma was under sea. So the god Brahma of the ancient Hindus was under the ocean for a period of time. Do we have evidence that the Great Pyramid Complex and Sphinx were under the ocean? Brahma, Abram had 4 faces. Remember, Abram and Sarah are no different than Brahma and Saraswati. The altar of Agni was built of 10,800 bricks. Oh, let me show you. Okay, Hipparchus wrote that there were 1080 fixed stars, obviously a code for something else. Here's a real mind F. Ancient Egypt, coffin text, spell 1080. You can't make this up. Coffin text, spell 1080. Reads in hieroglyphs, it is what came down from him onto the desert of sand. Remember on my channel, I quoted a 5th century ancient, I think it's Hesepti, Pharaoh Hesepti or the Hesepti dynasty, 5th century Egyptian, 5th dynasty Egyptian. They actually admit that the Great Pyramid complex was discovered, not built. Coffin text spell 1080. Why couldn't it have been 1079? Why couldn't it have been spell 1081? Why did it have to be coffin text spell 1080? It is what came down from him onto the desert of sand. Brahma, Abraham. What does the New Testament say? Abraham went to Egypt to look for a city whose builder and maker was God. What did Strabo and Diodorus Siculus describe? They described that when you got closer and closer to the Great Pyramid, it appeared as a heavenly building coming down from the sky. Can't make this stuff up. All this is in my book, Lost Scriptures of Giza, if you're interested in this material. Altar of Agni represents a stepped pyramid with white pyramids. This is what the altar of Agni looks like. White pyramids have been the Great Pyramid. The pyramid derived from the root meaning of fire. Altar of Agni was a pillar of fire, was an altar of fire. This is how these things were preserved after the reset. So again, we're going to return into Vanderbroek and the myth of the Phoenix. There's a couple passages we need to check out real quick. So, all right. On the basis of the computation given by Heraclitus, it was interpreted as a symbol of the soul. As such, the soul that takes a new incarnation every 1080 years. It follows from this that uncertainty could arise concerning the correct interpretation to be given to the phoenix as symbol of the soul in Hesiod's riddle. What? The phoenix, as I have shown in my published books and videos, has always been associated to the Great Pyramid. The phoenix and the Great Pyramid go together. I've shown you the measurements for the phoenix is all in the Great Pyramid. In traditions and myths, the phoenix is connected to the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx, which was the Riddler. So now we have a connection to the phoenix and the number 1080 and the transmigration of souls. You're just passing through this experience, guys. In Hesiod's version, the raven with its 108 generations was interpreted as an indication of the earthly life of man. 108 years. The phoenix as a symbol of the peregrinations. Nobody uses that word anymore. That's archaic. The phoenix is a symbol of the peregrine. I don't even know, man. Don't even give me the PGR word of the soul after death. 972. That's divisible by 108. Matter of fact, that's 9 times. That's 9 times 108. And the nymphs as a symbol of the totality of the PGR word within the great cycle of the soul. 9,720 years, which is 1080 times 9. The small cycle, the period between 2 successive incarnations, was thus put at 1080 years, and the great cycle at 10,800 years. All this is speculation on the part of people who survived the reset, and yet they still retain some information about the Great Pyramid and the date that it was completed and how important it was to the transmigration of souls in this construct. between the death of the individual and a new incarnation, which means that from birth to birth, the soul passed through periods of 1080 years. When I tell you about the Great Pyramid, every single stone represents a soul of man. To he who overcometh will I give him a white stone. If you doubt that interpretation, you need to read the Shepherd of Hermas. Because in the Shepherd of Hermas, you will read about divine beings coming together and building a pyramid, and that the individual stones are souls, and they must pass through the gate. And the ones that get put into the structure that didn't pass through the gate are removed and replaced with those who overcometh. Shepherd of Hermas text. I encourage everybody to read that. Might be about time for me to do a video on it. It's been what, 5 years? All right. Okay, so that concludes that file. We're moving right along. So we did see a reference to the pyramid being underwater. Yeah. You guys know that I'm a real critic of Robert Bauval and Hancock. I'm a critic because of their theory about the damage on the Sphinx. The reason they concluded what they concluded is because 100% of their data comes from uniformitarian conclusions. But there are better answers, and they're in the historical record, as to why the Sphinx was heavily damaged when the Great Pyramid was still basically intact. So there's a much better explanation. So this is Arabian author Muhammad ibn Abd al-Hakim, about 855 AD. The pyramids were antediluvian, and they resisted the force of the Great Flood. Oh, this is interesting. This is a fossil that we can find. This is a fossil that was found on Giza, right here. But we already know, in Archaix, we already know, man, fossils can be created very fast. Very fast. So this is a really good picture because it really shows exactly what happened. In 2239 BC, in the Typhon flood, the entire North African plate suffered subsidence. This happens all over the world in different areas. The entire plate went down. It did not come back up until 1899 BC, which was 340 years. This is the Egyptian second intermediate period. The Egyptians, they're not Egyptologists, they're a special breed. They don't want anything in Egyptian history to be compatible with any theories anywhere else in the world. So instead like other nations saying, oh, okay, 23rd and 22nd century BC it's a wipeout. No civilization in the world was recording anything. Everybody was reset. It was a worldwide cataclysm. It was a destruction. But in Egyptology, they won't say that. They won't tell you it's a destruction. They call it a second intermediate period. So during the second intermediate period, this is when this happened. That's when the pyramid was really intact. But you can see that the entire North African plate dropped 300 feet. That's not uncommon. Whole areas, we've seen whole areas do that in recent times, and they'll come back up. Davis Island totally disappeared with 5,000 inhabitants in the 1600s. 1902, United States naval survey vessels documented that the ocean floor from a volcanic eruption all around the island, the ocean floor sank 3,400 feet. Doesn't change the ocean levels, but the bottom went down 3,400 feet on their soundings. The whole history of the world is one of subsidence and upheaval. It explains everything. Look at Tiwanaku and Lake Titicaca, the pyramid, Lucarmata, the Gate of the Sun, that whole area. You think that area was built at 12,000 foot elevation? Hell no. Hell no. Because the fossilized coastal areas have been found. The old quays and docks have all been located now. It was built at sea level. Tiwanaku was at sea level, and in one day the Andes shot up. It's just upheaval. That's why the state of preservation is so amazing. is because it was shot up at 12,000 feet. It's cold up there, and there's not enough oxygen to do a lot of heavy labor and all that. So anyway, 300 foot for 340 years. Here's where the water level was. Do you see this area right here? This is the wave action, just like this chart shows. This is the wave. This is where the waves hit the Great Pyramid and worked on those casing stones for 340 years. During that 340 years, this up here, these casing stones remained, look at them. They remained intact. That's why it's the least damaged, and yet it's exposed to the most environmental factors. Thousands and thousands of years of wind right here at the top. But this is heavily damaged because that's where the water level was. It's long been known by scientists that the Great Pyramid contains more moisture than is normal. It's not supposed to have that much moisture in these blocks. Also, the original discoverers had to tunnel through thick incrustations of salt all throughout the Great Pyramid. Frederick Norton Lewis and Napoleon's people said that there was seashells around the entire area. So that's what we have here. If this was 300 feet in the Mediterranean, not because the whole world flooded, but because the North African plate sank. 340 years later, when the North African plate came back up, it was the year 1899 BC. Guess what ancient writers called Egypt at that time? It was called the raised land. You can't make this stuff up. No one can accuse me of making it up. It was called the raised land. Why? It raised out of the none. It raised out of the sea, the water. When it did, the Sphinx was terribly damaged. It was missing its head. It had a stump of a neck. So they worked with the materials they could after the flood. I don't know how many centuries after the flood, but they carved the neck stump into a little bitty Peabody head with a headdress. And anybody who has ever looked at drone footage of the Sphinx will know that the head is a little tiny dot on top of a giant body. And it's because the whole head was carved out of the neck stump. The original head has been lost. The Sphinx took all that damage because it suffered the currents of the Mediterranean for 340 years. It suffered when it sank 300 feet. It suffered when it was brought back out. In the Egyptian nine bows, the nine-hole delta area was created in 1899 BC when the whole plate came back up. This is why traditional Egypt, Waset, Kemet, Thebes, Luxor, Karnak, no, they're 450 miles away. There are no ancient Egyptian cities that are in this area around the Great Pyramid. All the ancient Egyptian cities are far to the south. There's 400 miles of open desert between Waset, Karnak, Thebes, Edfu, I can't name them all of Kemet. Traditional Hollywood version Valley of the Kings, Egypt, is 400 miles away from the Great Pyramid, and there are no pyramids there. None. There are no pyramids in Upper Egypt at all. All the pyramids are in Lower Egypt, but Lower Egypt was underwater for 340 years while Upper Egypt was being developed. So it became the two kingdoms only after one portion of Egypt was called the raised land because it raised up. This happened in the days of Menes. So anyway, that's that. The discovery of a controversial fossil backs up the studies and theories that the pyramids of Giza and the mighty Sphinx were once submerged under the sea. So Robert Bauval and Hancock, I'm discouraged with them because their theory is based upon uniformitarian principles, where they say the damage to the Sphinx is because of rainfall over a long period of time. But because Egypt has been a desert for the last 5,000 years, the rainfall must have been more than that. So Hancock gets to pigeonhole the Sphinx to his bullshit arbitrary age of Leo dating, which is total bullshit. The Sphinx was never a lion. It was Anubis. It was a dog. And the age of Leo didn't exist. And many other authors have criticized Hancock too, because he skips 2 whole zodiacal ages as well. Whatever happened to the other ages? You got all this data about the age of Leo. You keep making up all the stuff about the age of Leo because that would have put your Younger Dryas theory, at least give it some type of credibility. And Hancock clings to that 9,600 years Solon of Plato. Told it was 9,000 years, but he's got to ignore so many different ancient writers who corrected Plato in order to pass that off. Yeah, the whole Ice Age, Younger Dryas, Meltwater, Pulse 1B deal, it's all BS. I'm beginning to wonder if it's all just an intelligence agency giving these guys scripts. I do not believe Graham Hancock, Robert Bauval, Randall Carlson. I don't believe these guys are that dumb. So it has to be an agenda. I have no other way to conclude it because the correct information has already been out there. It's been out there for a while. I didn't just pop up. I've had published books on these topics for a long time, long before I ever started doing videos on YouTube. So anyway, that's the underwater aspect here. Yeah, the Sphinx would have been heavily damaged. It only took 340 years. It doesn't take 10,000 years at all. What's crazy is that the Sphinx damaging looks identical to the Grand Canyon. You don't say the Grand Canyon was created by rainfall. All right. Oh, so we get to the aspect about the Great Pyramid being the hidden door. The Amen, the hidden door, the door of the mountain. In the Bible, it's called the door to the sides of the north. Very interesting, this door, hidden for thousands and thousands of years. No one even knew that this portal, this gate was even underneath these blocks. No one even knew. Which leads us to this. I really need to visit this again. It's been a long time. So there's a Hopi petroglyph that's in Arizona that's very, very holy, and it's protected by descendants of the Hopi Indians in a village called Winema. Or Winema. So Winema is the village that's the official guardians and protectors of the petroglyph. And this petroglyph is said to be very, very important. What you're looking at is a pyramid. That pyramid has special blocks as casing blocks. The pyramid appears to be, it has a door. But that pyramid's door is unusual because the door itself is a deity. It's a god. A god is the door to this pyramid that's covered in these special blocks. This is an ancient Hopi petroglyph. If you think the interpretation is arbitrary, take this into consideration. Underneath the Great Pyramid, as I showed you, we have a subterranean chamber with a bottomless pit, a deep well. Well, the Hopi clan that lives in Winema and protects this petroglyph is called the Deep Well clan. And the name of their holy village, Winema, literally means in Hopi, the way home. You can't make this stuff up. Thank you, Frank Waters, for that information in the Book of the Hopi. So we have a Hopi petroglyph that shows a pyramid covered in special casing blocks that has a secret chamber or a secret entrance that no one knows about. It's right there in the petroglyph. But the way into this pyramid is through a door that happens to be a god, a deity. And yet, the people that protect this are the Deep Well clan who live in a village called the Way Home. Entrance to the Great Pyramid hidden for thousands of years. No one knew about this. No one knew about this at all. Here's the Muslim tunnel. That's the tunnel that opened up the pyramid. When they did this, they had no idea this massive gate. These are the largest blocks in the Great Pyramid. Look at them. They're called the chevrons. That's the Gate of IAKSAKKAK. That right there you're looking at, that's the Gate of Rostau. This entire structure, all these blocks were built to protect that door. Here's just different pictures. This is the Phoenix Gate. Here's an illustration. This is what it looks like. Oh, no, this is underneath it. The chevrons are right here. Where my cursor is, the chevrons are right here on the striped blocks. These are the bricks blocking the chevrons. There's a tunnel up here. This is the little tunnel that goes down. This is the descending passage. We'll look at that in a minute. Chevrons. There's a passage that's been blocked right here. There is a tunnel right here where this massive slab has been put here. This has been concreted. This is a tunnel. The chevrons mark a tunnel that goes straight to the Queen's Chamber. This right here is the descending passage that the Muslims found. This is the original entrance. This is the tunnel of Al-Mamun right here. Here's the entrance Egyptologists will not admit exists. Those chevrons are blocking this entrance here. This has never been shown this has never been revealed. Egyptologists do not admit that this passage exists, but this is the original entrance to the Great Pyramid. This is the descending passage entrance. This is the original chevron entrance that has not been used since before the flood. It's been plugged, and it's been plugged on this end. It's been hidden on this end. They've concreted this whole entrance. There's the descending passage that goes down, but the entrance that goes straight, it's been blocked. You can see concrete back there. They blocked it completely. This is different time periods these photos were made. Look at that. What happened to that giant block that was there? Now we got solid concrete. See that block? See? Different time periods. Different time periods. Look. What are they hiding? What was that necessary for? This is the original construction. Why do we see this now? What the hell? This is the old door. See the chevrons? The door they're hiding is where this dude's sitting. This is the entrance that the Egyptologists do not admit exists. There's a whole tunnel here that goes all the way to the Queen's Chamber. The one used today is the descending passage right here. That's the descending passage. There's a better picture of it there. There's the descending passage everybody uses today, right here on the bottom. This right here is the one Egyptologists do not admit exists. We haven't even got to the juicy, guys. So, in the preservation, we know that the Phoenix and the pyramid are interchangeable, but the pyramid has long been associated to also, like this gold relic from the Americas. Here's an eye above a pyramid in the Americas. Now, it has been my position for a long time to convey to you guys that we do not experience linear time. History is not linear. It is cyclical. And when something is cyclical, a circle, just like the ancient symbol conveys. Erebos is the serpent that's eating its own tail. Why? Because the future will collide into the past. And the more you study and learn about the past, you're only learning about the near future. They will collide. There was a time in the ancient Americas where they remembered that this monument made of bricks in the form of a pyramid with an eye over it had substantial meaning to them. They remembered this. We're looking at an artifact that was made in our history, but it preserves a history from a whole different cycle, a history they remembered. How do they remember that? What are they remembering? What are the ancient Americas remembering? Because there's going to come a point where memory is going to blend in to future. There's going to come a point where they collide. And that many of the things that we find in the historical record and in the textual record and in the traditional record and in the archaeological record are actually fossils from the future. What were the ancient Americans in Ecuador remembering when they made that object? When they made this? Further, what about ancient Mexico? You guys have seen it. Let me find it again. Let me find it real quick. Oh, I got stuff everywhere. Let me find this real fast. Here it is. Stone, the Toltec stone of the fifth sun. 22 tons. It was later preserved by the Aztecs. On this structure right here, this calendar stone, we find the Toltec doomsday symbol for four movement. It's called four movement. This is the symbol. It's a pyramid with an eye and crossed bars. Crossed bars symbolize the completion of a cycle. The eye is in the middle. This is a clear pyramid underneath it. The doomsday symbol is above it. That's the doomsday symbol over the eye, over the pyramid. This is all on that 22-ton disc that I showed you. This symbol is the day of four movement. I'm going to tell you, the symbol is basically telling you 2046, return to Nemesis X object, but we'll get to that. Here it is again. What were the ancient Mexicans? This is a Mexican manuscript. What were they remembering when they made these little graphic codes? Here are the seven. Here are the seven eyes of the Pleiades star system. The seven sisters. This is the constellation. One of them is the eye right here that is using the crossed bars as a site on a temple. But when you connect the eye to the two corners of the temple, we have the pyramid with the shaft coming out of it. The eye and the pyramid. What were these people remembering? And don't think it's just one artifact. The Americas are full of artifacts that show phoenixes and pyramids. Here are people, happy people, smiling people and animals. Here they all are right here with a pyramid and flowers and all. What happened in that timeline that gave them the idea that the pyramid and the phoenix was a good thing? What happened? Look at this. Two cat-like guardians, a deity or a sun at the top. Oh, it might be an eye at the top of a very clear pyramid that has inscriptions at the base. I can't read the inscriptions. These are ancient American artifacts. What were they remembering? Because when it comes to our timeline, this is where we have the pyramid in the eye. What were they remembering? So these files aren't random. I'm going somewhere with this. Such as, real fast, we'll go through this. If anybody thinks the Great Pyramid is just a pyramid, they know nothing about it. The technolithic precision, the engineering required to build something like this, we can't do it today. The Japanese tried to build a pyramid just like the one at Giza on a scale 1/10 the size of the one at the Great Pyramid. They quit on the first course. If you don't get the first course done, there's no way you can lay the second course. Everything has to be laser precise when you stack courses. There are 203 of these courses, and these courses at different mathematical angles penetrate the whole structure for hundreds and hundreds of feet. Yeah, I tell you all the time, guys, machines were used to build the Great Pyramid. Machines built this. This had a machine function. You can see by the bottom track. Look at the tracks in here. You can see the tracks in here. It's for a machine. This is the Grand Gallery. It's 153 feet. What's 153? In the Bible, Gematria 153, sons of God. 153 feet is how long that shaft is. Great Pyramid. Massive, heroic engineering. Technolithically precise. Look at this. All made of stone. And different stone materials for different purposes. Yeah, this engineering, we've never seen anything like this in our world. Engineering was amazing. Grand Gallery. Yeah, this is just, it's amazing, the engineering here. See the other pyramids? The other pyramids did not replicate the upper features because they didn't know about them. They were hidden. They were completely hidden in a disguised ceiling block. That's why no pyramids in the world match what the Great Pyramid has. It's the only pyramid in the world like it. You can't even imagine the weight of all this stone. Perfectly laid out. It's very precise. You know what? I'm going to put this to side because I'm going to use that in a minute. That's a good, clear picture. Grand Gallery is technolithic. Look at that precision. I'm going somewhere with this, guys. Queen's Chamber. Just showing you can see how precise it is. That is just amazingly precise. This is the antechamber. Do you think a mechanism like this with locks and traps has anything to do with burying a pharaoh? No, this right here was to control pressure. There's the antechamber. Granite leaf. There's the entrance. Massive blocks on the entrance. Here's the antechamber again. This is limestone, 126 inches. Then the rest of it, 408 inches, is solid granite. The King's Chamber is all granite. The Great Step, the central axis of the Great Pyramid right here, is limestone. There's that passage. Yeah, look at this. Look at this laser precision here. This is the axis conjunct. We will be visiting this because all the magic happens right here at the axis conjunct. This is the descending passage where the ascendant passage goes up to the Grand Gallery. It is a conjunct right here. This is where the magic happens in the math. Great Pyramid. Those are the old granite plugs that used to be there. Muslims got them out. All right, I think we've seen enough. See, they're not showing the cross section because this was drawn in 1909. So they didn't even know that this passage was here. Now we know there's a passage there, but the Egyptian government just isn't sharing it. They're not telling anybody about it. Not letting anybody know. All right. My dogs are going off. Somebody. Going off. Take me a little water break. 2 hours and 6 minutes into this. We haven't got to the juicy yet, guys. This is going to get crazy. All right. So I've covered that. Let's see. So in ancient Egypt, the two principal gods that everyone wanted to sacrifice to venerate, that did not want to ignore, were Anubis and Thoth. They were integral to your passage through the Kingdom of Seker and to finding through the labyrinth after death, finding the Gate of Rostau and making it to the other side. Thoth's role is a very interesting role. He's a god of measurement. Writing, scientific knowledge, wisdom. He's basically the patron. He's the patron deity of scribes and mathematicians. He is responsible for recording precise measurements in cosmic and earthly realms. This is Thoth. He's the ibis-headed god, often with a stylus in his hand, a reed pen. He's often seen holding measuring tools and recording all kinds of cosmic calculations. This is Thoth's role. Thoth, for all intents and purposes, is an Egyptian Enoch. So, let's see. Man, I should have pulled up the Rhind mathematical papyrus. You know what? That's a video by itself. So anyway, Anubis, is the jackal-headed deity, the god. It's the original Sphinx was Anubis, and this is both of these gods have critical roles in the afterlife journey, especially in the weighing of the heart ceremony. So, but it's just so unusual that a god of the dead, a god that would help ferry your soul into the other world, is actually a god of precision measurements, and that Thoth is attached to the chamber of the plans with numbers. The divine secrets of Thoth were considered numerical symbols. He's also the god of magic. So I don't know, when it comes to math, I guess in ancient times you could have also been considered a magician. I don't know. But Thoth and Anubis are critical in understanding that their roles as guardians of the Gate of Rostau. As a guardian, the jackal-headed Anubis is much like Cerberus of the ancient Greeks. But Cerberus of the ancient Greeks became a three-headed god. A three-headed demon dog that guarded the gate to the underworld. In the Aztec mythology, there was a special mountain that was protected by a giant dog at the head of 9 rivers. I've shown this before. I might even have it here. I might even have it here. Let me check this file. You guys have seen it. I've showed it several times. I don't know if I have it here right now or where it would be. Surprised it didn't have it in this presentation. I'm surprised. So we get to a point where there's no easy way to convey a cyclical history. It's just an intellectual exercise for most people. But what I'm going to show you wouldn't be possible from the ancient Egyptian world. It has to have come from a world before that, when the standards of measurement were the exact standards we use today. And as I've already showed you, those same standards have already isolated the number 138 in multiple patterns all throughout the rectilinear measurements of the interior of the Great Pyramid. And they're not my measurements. They're the scientifically accepted measurements. How is this possible? So in the 1800s, there were many researchers who believed that the Great Pyramid speaks in inches. And I think it does as well. I have no problem with that assertion. But I'm gonna show you some things that are very profound as we now get into this presentation. So let me get this out of here. Share my screen once again. Yeah, I gotta fix the screen deal. I'm gonna have to watch some YouTube tutorials or something. I gotta fix that. I gotta figure out how to share my screen without sharing the whole damn screen, just the center part. I don't know how to do that yet. All right. So you don't need to see the bottom right there. Wow, that is so weird, man. I got to fix that. My screen is so wide. All right, so what you're looking at, of course, is a cross section of the Great Pyramid. And the very first thing I want to bring to your attention is that it is very unusual that the scientific measurements for the Great Pyramid show that the bottom of the great slab of the King's Chamber is precisely 138 feet above the very center of the foundation of the Great Pyramid. That's crazy. Not 131 feet 1 inch. Yeah, not 137 feet 11 inches. It is 138 feet from here to here. It's also 230 feet from the base of the great slab all the way down underneath the pyramid to the ceiling of the underground chamber right here. This is 230. That's 230 feet. So I have these measurements for you here. I should have told you this. Most of you already know that 138 feet, that's an American British measurement. What's it doing so perfect in the Great Pyramid? Now, but for anybody who is unaware of the massive amount of data sets that we have on the Phoenix and the 138 year periodicity, I get it. There's no mystery here for you. But for everybody who has seen the Phoenix research, what is going on here? And all the internal rectilinear measurements that are all divisible by 138. What is this? 138 feet from the base to the foundation. Foundation means beginning. That great slab is something else. It's like a barrier. 138 feet is exactly 1656 inches. 1656 is the year of the flood in the book of Genesis. 1656, Anno Mundi, the year of the Great Flood, which was our calendar, 2239 BC. But what are feet and inches doing so perfectly commensurate with the dimensions of the Great Pyramid? The Egyptians didn't build this. What civilization used feet and inches to construct this? 230 feet base slab to ceiling and subterranean chamber. 230 is not arbitrary, and it's not 230 feet in 1 inch. It's not 200. It's not 229 feet 11 3/4 inches. No, it's 230 feet. 230 feet is precisely 2,760 inches from the base of the great slab all the way to the ceiling. It's like a mirror, the ceiling underground of the subterranean chamber. 2,760 is perfectly divisible by 138. Get your own cell phones and calculators out. 230 feet is 2,760 inches. It is divisible by 138. Feet and inches have no place in a structure that was built 5,000 years ago if we're living in linear, on a linear timeline. But if we're living on a cyclical timeline, there's no mystery here at all. And all these artifacts from ancient America that show a pyramid with an eye and all that make perfect sense. We know what they're remembering. They're remembering the future. Time is cyclical. We're heading right for a cataclysm, which is the exact same cataclysm we suffered in the ancient past. We're on a loop. So, the perimeter of the pyramid, right here at the bottom corner, the very far right, the perimeter of the pyramid is precisely 379.5 feet from the great step central axis of the monument. That dotted line is the center of the whole monument. The great step that goes in there that I showed you guys earlier, the great step, that face of the great step is exactly 379.5 feet from the perimeter. These are Sir Flinders Petrie's measurements, not mine. Not mine. 379.5 feet is exactly 4,554 inches, which is divisible perfectly by 138. I got to sneeze. Excuse me. All right. I showed you earlier. I told you earlier, like in the New Testament, gematria 153 is the number for the sons of God in Greek. Now, this whole huge alien, unusual, machine-like grand gallery is exactly 153 feet long. The distance on the ceiling is 153 feet. And when you get here, it is precisely 100 feet above the foundation. So 100 plus 153 is exactly 253 feet. 253 feet is 3,036 inches. The Great Pyramid is self-referencing. 3,036 inches is not only divisible by 138, but it's also the exact length from the passage axis conjunct right here, right there, is 3,036 inches all the way to the floor joint at the bottom of the passage. Not my measurements. Those are Sir Flinders Petrie. It's divisible by 138. The perimeter of the Great Pyramid to the central axis conjunct of the descending passage and the ascending passage, the newly discovered conjunct passage right here that was discovered by Al-Mamun in 820 AD. This central axis between these two passages and the perimeter of the Great Pyramid is exactly 126.5 feet. 126.5 feet is 1,518 inches. It's 1,518 inches, perfectly divisible by 138. I just showed you this one. This is 253 feet from the central axis conjunct between the passages all the way down here to the floor joint is 253 feet, which is 3,036 inches. This is self-referencing for the same measurement that you saw up here. Same measurement. It is divisible by 138. So, from the entrance of the Great Pyramid, which is the descending passage, from this entrance all the way down this entire tunnel to the bottom of the tunnel floor joint right here is 345 feet. This is the middle distance. The middle, when I'm talking about the dead center of the passage, it's the middle distance. 345 feet is exactly 4,140 inches. 4,140 is precisely divisible by 138. The reason I have to tell you it's the middle distance is because Petrie noticed that the descending passage has 3 different lengths. It's because the floor joint at the bottom isn't square. Once it goes into the subterranean area, the floor joint kind of turns a little bit. So one side of the floor joint is 4,134 inches from the entrance. The other side is 4,146 inches from the entrance. The mean between them is 4,140. Somebody blowing up my phone. Remember, the Great Pyramid is self-referencing. The same 345 feet that made the 4,140 inches of the descending passage. Look at this. 345 feet above the foundation level of the pyramid to 345 feet high is 4,140 inches, which is divisible by 138, exactly at the 144th course, 12 times 12. That's a golden proportion number on the Fibonacci series. 144th course is 4,140 inches. It is 345 feet high. Here's a real simple one. The subterranean chamber mean height is published by Petrie at 11 and a half feet. That's a real easy one because 11 and a half feet is 138 inches. The subterranean chamber ceiling width right here underneath the pyramid, the height is 138 inches, but the width of the ceiling of the subterranean chamber is 46 feet. 46 feet is 552 inches, which is 138 times 4. The subterranean chamber entry to chamber back wall. There's the back wall. That's the back wall. The entrance at the floor joint is 55.8 feet. $55.8 feet. This is really this is trippy here. 55.8 feet is 670 inches. Why is this interesting? 670 is how long the seven kings ruled before the flood. 670 is how long the Hittite Empire lasted. If you guys remember, 670 comes up a lot, even in Roman history. But 670 is the length in inches of 55.8 feet. Let me show you what it looks like on a chart before I tell you what 670 really is. All right, so where am I going to go? So I guess I'll look at Sir Flinders Petrie right here. You see that 670 in the middle? That's what you're talking about. It's 55.8 feet. That is 670 inches. Why is that really interesting? What did Nostradamus say? Many will die before the phoenix dies. Until 670 his dwelling shall endure. The dwelling of the phoenix is what? It's the sky. 670 right here. In another order of arithmetic, if you divide it by 5, 1.618, you get perfectly 414.0, a cursed earth period. This is what Nostradamus was talking about. 414 times 5, 1.618, the golden proportion is 670. 414 is 138 times 3. Nostradamus knew, like I've told you many times, guys, Nostradamus knew what he was talking about. Everything he said was in code. Everything. And it's so easy to figure it out once you know. Once you basically know the ciphers. All right, so I am back here again. I don't know if that was my last one. That's the subterranean chamber. Here's the next one. All right, so the subterranean chamber level length, the full length from the floor joint of the descending passage all the way to the back of this cave is 117.8 feet. 117.8 feet is 1,414 inches. It's 1,000 plus a cursed earth period, 414. 414 is 138 times 3. Self-referencing everywhere. That's why I know Sir Flinders Petrie got his measurements right. It's self-referencing everywhere. Subterranean chamber ceiling to pyramid foundation level is 89.16 feet. This is the subterranean ceiling right here to the foundation level right here. It is 89.16 feet. The subterranean chamber level length is, like we just saw, 117.83 feet. The horizontal length and the vertical length right here of the subterranean chamber underneath the structure is exactly 207 feet. What is 207? We just saw two self-referencing 414 patterns of 414, which is divisible by 138, and they're connected to the subterranean chamber. Now this is connected to the subterranean chamber, and it's a total of 207 feet, and they're totally different measurements. 207 is exactly half of 414. Next. Length of the great slab of the king's chamber. The length of the great slab chamber foundation is 44.5 feet. That's the length of the whole great slab, 44.5 feet. Let's see. The total height of the pyramid with the capstone is 484 feet. So if the capstone was in place, the Great Pyramid would stand 5,814 inches. So the total height of the pyramid with the capstone is 484.5 feet. 484.5 plus 44.5 is 529 feet. So this is the vertical height of the structure and the horizontal length of the most important aspect of the Great Pyramid, the Great Slab, at the very dead center of the structure. So vertical and horizontal here, we have 529 feet. 529 feet is 6,348 inches. 6,348 is divisible by 138. As a matter of fact, it's 138 46 times. 138 times 46 is 6,348, which in inches, which is precisely 529 feet. Why are we finding mathematical mysteries and patterns and parallels in inches and feet in a structure that was built in Egypt 5,000 years ago, for which the Egyptians have no history? Why? How is this possible? Total height of the pyramid with capstone at 484.5 feet, vertical height, and the height of the Queen's chamber from the foundation at 70.5 feet. So we have total height of the pyramid with capstone at 484.5 feet, and we have the height of the Queen's chamber from ceiling at here's the Queen's chamber ceiling right here at 70.5 feet. So 484.5 minus 70.5 is exactly, there's your number again. Many will die when the phoenix dies. Until 670 his dwelling shall endure. 670 divided by the principal number that is found everywhere in the Great Pyramid, 1.618. Phi, the golden proportion. The king's chamber is 17 feet in width. The queen's chamber is 17 feet in width. There is 17 feet between the central great step axis and the well pit axis. Process that. Here's the central axis of the Great Pyramid. That's the central axis of the Great Pyramid. But the well pit axis, this is the axis to the well pit. They're 17 feet apart. So 17 is going to be a very important number to the Great Pyramid and what 17 conveys. Matter of fact, I have to look it up. I'm going to show it to you. Mm-mm. 17-foot width of the king's chamber is 204 inches. 17-foot queen's chamber width is 204 inches. 204 inches between both of the central axes of the Great Pyramid itself and the well pit underneath it. 17 feet is 204 inches. Where have you seen this number before? Wasn't Ezra instructed to, didn't Ezra receive 204 books from 4 angels that contain the past, present, and the future? Those books, I told you, books are containers of knowledge. Ezra received divine information. That divine information was in the form of 204 books. Remember from previous presentations the value of the Phoenix phenomenon chronology. It isolated the year 1902. 1902 was also isolated by Nostradamus, also by Charles Fort. 1902 is also on the 138-year periodicity of the Phoenix. 1902 is 204 years to the end of the calendar in 2106 AD. 2106 AD, 204 years. Maybe I have it here for you after all. I should have it. I should have this chart somewhere. These courses you see right here, with 1902 being the foundation of the Great Pyramid, every single one of these courses is chronolithic. It is a year of time to a countdown. That countdown is the return of the chief cornerstone. Ezra was given 204 books. Here are the 204 books. They are courses of divine information that are found through geometry, and arithmetic. This information goes all the way up 203 courses to the very top of the pyramid where there's a flat top. The 204th is the chief cornerstone. How do we know? Because each one of these slopes is 51 degrees. The Great Pyramid has 4 sides. 4 sides times 51 degrees is 204. It is self-referencing. But when we get to the top, that's when we find out what it means that Enoch received 366 books. Why? What does it mean? Because once the chief cornerstone is in place, the Great Pyramid is 5,814 inches high, which is exactly 366 inches higher than its present height at the flat top at 5,448 inches. Every bit of this is self-referencing, even in the traditions. Our myths and traditions were specifically designed to preserve key mathematical information that we would use in the future when it came time to reactivate whatever the structure is designed to do. It's still fully functional. There's no doubt in my mind. So, yeah, the measurement, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane when we think about all this. Okay, there's all the 17s. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. So with 1902 being the final countdown, it's what I call the Giza chronolithic countdown. Every course is a year, all the way to 2105. 2106 is the return of the chief cornerstone. That's when that's the stone the builders rejected. The stone uncut by human hands sits down at the top of the monument. And when that happens, we have another British-American unit of measurement that is undeniable. When that happens, the apophthegm to the Great Pyramid becomes 612.0 feet. What does that mean? It means that in inches from the base of the pyramid to the return of the chief cornerstone in 2106 AD is exactly 7,344 inches. Why is this important? 7,344 is divisible by 3 by the number of Exodus 24:48. This structure has everything to do with Exodus and entrance. I believe that at the end of a cycle, which is the beginning of another cycle, there is a massive exchange between us and something else. We'll get to that in a minute. 612 is not arbitrary. It's exact feet. But where have you seen that before? Where have you guys seen that before? Well, I guess I have to go find it. I got so many things open on my deal. Damn. Where's a good chart when you need one? You guys have seen my chart, 7,344 years of recorded human history starting in 5239 BC. The Archaix chronology, my Archaix books, all my published books, all 1,000 and something of my videos, hundreds of my articles, every single year. I mean, every single chronological presentation lets you know. Archaix chronology does not go beyond 5239 BC because that is the oldest known recorded calendar that we have, and it's the Anunnaki Ner system. It was a 600-year and 60-year period that gave rise to the Sumerian sexagesimal system. It started in 5239 BC. It made the 3,000th year to be the Great Flood, the Typhon flood of Noah, 2239 BC. That's the earliest calendar we go back to, 5239 BC. And 5239 BC plus 2448 years, plus 2448 years, plus 2448 years is 7,344 years. It is the year 2106 AD. The return of the chief cornerstone. So, why is all this calendrical associations I showed you in the Great Pyramid are merely preparatory to what I'm about to show you. These are the truth bombs. They're coming. So Anunnaki-Ner, 5239 BC. You see, here's different calendars. Anunnaki-Ner, the Phoenix cycle of 552 years, Nemesis X of 792 years, the Phoenix of 138 years, and the Mayan long count Bactans. Here are 5 different ancient calendrical systems. Here's the crossover. Do you see we're under the red Phoenix cycle 552 years? You see in red, you see 522 AD. Common Era, 522 CE. When you go to the next black section, which is Nemesis X, which is 792 year periodicity, you will find also 522 AD. It is the only time in history going back 10,000 years before and 10,000 years into the future that these two calendars ever share the same year. The Phoenix appeared in 522, and it appeared and Nemesis X appeared in 522. And we know by virtue of the Archaix research that it started a 25-year darkness period. Earthquakes, tsunamis, plagues, the dark ages began, human depopulation, and reptiles, amphibians, and avians, and mushrooms, and plants and trees started growing to astonishing sizes because something fundamentally changed. And it stayed changed for a few centuries. And Native Americans and other people started recording all kinds of gigantic reptiles and amphibians and all over. They were using it for food and domesticating them. And we have ceramics and mugs and glassware. We have weapons. We have all these artifacts from the Dark Age period that show that humans were living side by side with what our scientists are calling prehistoric creatures. But they weren't 65 million years ago. They were during the Dark Ages. We even have medieval paintings that show them. So 520, remember the Phoenix phenomenon is all about volcanic outgassing. And we've already shown from our 1902 research that ambient radiation from volcanoes promotes giantism. Ambient radiation made the insects, plants, and humans that were on the island grow exceedingly fast. So 522 and 522 AD is when this began. This is critical for you to know because we're about to look back into the Great Pyramid to see what the Great Pyramid is conveying to us about this year. Again, 522, 522. 522 again right here on the Phoenix 138-year periodicity. Let's get out of here. So I think I'm going to start. Let me get out of that document. Guys, you just can't make this stuff up. I'm not going to lead you astray. But we've already seen that just like in the 1800s, those researchers in the 1800s, they couldn't show it because none of them were chronologists. They didn't really have an accurate chronology of the world. They only had bits and pieces, but the bits and pieces they had confirmed for them that whoever built the Great Pyramid wanted us to know by the little 1-inch boss that's located for everybody to see on a granite leaf hanging in the antechamber that you must see and look at before you go into the king's chamber. They say that little 1-inch boss is the unit of measurement for the whole structure. And they declare that the Great Pyramid speaks in inches. And we have shown that each inch equals a solar year. So there are many critics of this theory, but there are none that have ever even come close to the Archaix research. They have only criticized David Davidson, who had an inaccurate chronology, Taylor, who had an inaccurate chronology, and all these others, but none of those men even knew about the 138-year patterning all throughout the structure or the self-referencing features. These are all discoveries in Archaix, as well as the Archaix chronology. You guys have seen Chronicon, and you know Chronicon is huge. And in 20 years, I have never had to change a single date in there. I don't need to. History is fixed. And it's so easy. It's so easy to see all these things. What you're looking at on the screen right now is the beginning of the timeline. This straight timeline right here. 3373 BC was one of the Enochian calendars. 3373 BC is the first year of the ancient American Olmec calendar. The Olmec calendar is a forerunner of the Mayan calendar. Very unusual that it does not count backwards, it counts forward in time. The 3373 BC start date is not my start date. That's Mesoamerican scholars gave us that date based off the calculations they saw on the Olmec steels. 3373 BC is 408 years, which is represented by the granite floor right here. The granite floor is exactly 408 inches until it turns into limestone, which is the great step. But the 408 inches representing years brings us to the date 2965 BC. If you look in Chronicon, or if you look in Stephen Jones' book, Secrets of Time, you will find out that in 2965 BC, the sun darkened and Adam died. The year in our calendar was 2965 BC, but in the pre-flood world, it was the year 930. Why is that important? It's important because 930 is exactly 138 plus 792. 138 is the Phoenix number, 792 is the Nemesis X number. What in the hell is happening here? Using feet and inches, we are verifying everything about the Phoenix and Nemesis timeline using rectilinear measurements in the Great Pyramid, which is a 5,000-year-old structure not built by the Egyptians, but built so far back in time, but using British American standards of measurement. What in the hell's going on? 408 years after the Olmec American calendar began, we have 2965, Adam dies. 930. Anybody can look up these dates in Chronicon. It's not just Chronicon. Even the 400-year-old Archbishop James Ussher got that right. Adam died in the year 930. Anybody can pull their phone out and verify that if you take the number 138 and the number 792 and add them together, you're going to get the number 930. What I'm telling you is that Genesis text and all of its numbers are ciphers, because somebody in ancient times wanted us to preserve these numbers and they didn't care how. There was no Adam. There was no Adam and Eve. These are the ciphers for us to decode something, because all these numbers like 1080 and 10,800, these are all designed and they were implanted in our traditions in order for us to remember. So when the time came, we could use these numbers to basically decode whatever we needed to decode. It was known. We built the Great Pyramid. We built the Great Pyramid because we knew it was the way to save the world. We built the Great Pyramid because we knew that it could create a portal that at least some of us can get out. We built the Great Pyramid as a mechanism, a technologically advanced race using British American standards of measurement. We built the Great Pyramid. It only appears because we're on a cyclical timeline and not a linear timeline that the event was 5,000 years ago. So we have the beginning, the very first measurement of this whole pattern right here, starting in the King's Chamber, has already identified Phoenix and Nemesis X. Already identified. Just the 408 inches, 408 years. Then it changes to limestone right here at the Great Step, which is 126 inches. It's 126 inches to 2839 BC. If you look in Stephen Jones' work, if you look in Chronicon, you will find out 2839 BC was the birth of Noah. Noah was the survivor of a cataclysm. So the message that we have here, if you look in Archbishop James Ussher's Annals of the World, you'll find out that Noah was born in the year 1056. 1056 is exactly this right here. So 1056 is 2839 BC. So these two measurements have already told us a very profound message. And that message is the sun darkened and the old race died. The new race was born and began a timeline. And that timeline was unbroken. Look at this line. This line goes down 3,360 inches. You see this line? It starts here at the Great Face, birth of Noah. Noah didn't even live. Noah's a code. Noah is the progenitor of a new race. The new race that survived out of this cataclysm had an unbroken timeline of 3,360 years until this event here, when the race was broken again. Where have you seen that number in the Archaix research? It's not even the date 522 that's amazing here. It's the fact is that some of you are waking up to the idea that you're looking at an architectural lithic representation of two independent timelines. But right here, and this is where the confusion has been for years in my own research, because I didn't see it. So this is the message so far. The sun darkened and the old race died. It was a cataclysm. The new race was born, and it started on an unbroken timeline, 3,360 years to the year in our calendar, 522 AD. Remember, guys, our calendar is new. We were lied by the Catholic Church lied to us when they created the Anno Domini calendar. They claimed they created the Anno Domini calendar, and that it was created, I think, by Diogenes, Sosigenes, whatever his name is, in 526 AD. And they backdated it to the birth of Christ, but none of that's true. The world was destroyed in 522. You've seen the Archaix research. Sky dragons, earthquakes, all kinds of things were happening all over the world in 522. And then in 523, 524, all the way to the 540s, it was nothing but cataclysmic. 522 AD begins the Dark Ages. Right here. So we have a perfect message. The message began with the sun darkening and Adam died. The old race died, the Adamu. The new race born. Noah in Chinese is Noah. The new race is born. Unbroken timeline, 3,360 years, and they get wiped out in 522 AD. They're totally wiped out. Almost. There are survivors. In which began the Dark Ages, total worldwide depopulation. And in that message, we are told that the cause is both Phoenix and Nemesis X. How do we know? Because Adam died in 930 AD. 930 is 138 plus 792. At the end of this timeline for the Noahic race, 522, what happens? It's the only year in world history that Phoenix and Nemesis were here at the same time. You can get your own calculators out, you can get your computer programs out, and you will find out that 10,000 years into the past, 10,000 years into the future, you will not find Phoenix and Nemesis visiting the same year. It's incredible. But they were both here in 522. Do you see the descending passage that got us here? This is actually the ascending passage. But this right here is the descending passage. You're looking at not just two timelines, two calendars. You're looking at two ecliptics that intersect. And the objects on the separate ecliptics collided on 522 AD. It's right here. But we're not done. As you can see, I don't have to tell you, The 522 AD central axis conjunct between the descending passage and the ascending passage is precisely 1,518 inches, which is divisible by 138. It is exactly 1,518 inches, meaning 522 AD is 1,518 years from to the year 2040. 2040 represents the perimeter of the pyramid. From the farthest measurable distance of the pyramid, the perimeter, all the way to the farthest measurable distance in the ascendant passages, which is the back wall of the king's chamber right here. 3373 BC, an Enochian calendar called the Olmec calendar began. And it literally told us the cycle that we're in right here. Here's your cycle. This is when our world began. This is when our simulation began. This is when our timeline began. This is when the human race had to start over. We're not even a part of the Noahic race anymore. Some of us have those genetics and genes and all that, but since 522, we're of a whole nother epic. Oh, and if you thought this is the only chart I have to show you, you're terribly mistaken. So crazy, guys. It's just so crazy. Oh, I do need to show you one more thing. So it would be very interesting if this was, I mean, just as it is, but it's not. There's closure here, meaning there's a cycle here showing the calendar round. This is where it's going to get really unusual for you guys. I've already showed you all the measurements here. They're in feet and they're in inches, and this is British American measurements. It's a 5,000-year-old structure, but this is where it gets even really weird. The start date of 3373 BC is connected to 522 AD right here, where Nemesis and both Phoenix appeared. This date right here, 522 AD. Remember, if something is true, it can be seen from multiple different vantage points. Also, everything in the pyramid is self-referencing. 522 AD, both Phoenix and Nemesis started our age. This was the collision of two ecliptics and the objects that were on those ecliptics in the sim. 522 AD, 522 years before the calendar began of 3373 BC, 522 years before the Olmec ancient American Enochian calendar of 3373 BC gives us the exact year, 3895 BC. For those of you who are not following, I'm going to show it to you, because you can't misunderstand what I'm saying here. 3895 BC, well, that's self-referencing, is year one of the pre-flood world. This isn't even my research. This is Dr. Stephen Jones' chronology of the world. 3895 BC, year zero of the pre-flood world, 3895 BC. It is the beginning of the calendar. For those of you, my Archaix veterans, you also know 3895 BC is on the 138-year Phoenix timeline, and it was total systemic reset, total Adam and Eve reset. Can't make this shit up. Not only is 3895 BC the beginning of the calendar, but 3895 is also a self-referencing feature in the Great Pyramid, showing us that the measurements are true and correct, showing us that inches and feet are the unit of measurement for the builders of the Great Pyramid, and therefore Enoch in the book of Enoch is correct, that the pillar in Syriad, in the land of Egypt, the altar of God in the land of Egypt, would stand as a testimony all the way to the last days. Enoch's ministry was for the future. That's what we're seeing here. He patterned everything in inches and feet. Here's a perfect self-referencing feature right here that proves the measurements. Sir Flinders Petrie noticed there's two different measurements. This is a long distance, guys. 3,361 inches right here, but it's a wide track. It's a wide track. On one side, it's 3,360. On another, it's 3,361. There's two different measurements for that track. Look at this. You just can't make this stuff up. Do you see this whole floor slab right here that we just calculated at 408 inches of granite and 126 inches of limestone to get to the great step? This is the floor of the king's chamber and antechamber. The slab itself is exactly 534 inches. This 534 inches is extremely, extremely critical for you to understand, because 534 years after 3895 BC was the appearance of Enki and the Anuna. 534 years before the Great Pyramid was built was the appearance of Enki and the Anuna in 3439 BC. 534, the length of this slab, and the length that got us to 522 AD right here. There it is. You can do your own math. That's 3895. It's 3895. You just can't make this stuff up. There is also the argument that because the pyramid inch is 0.001% off of the actual English American inch, that it's still going to be a perfect without the sloping distance of 3361, the two different distances for the length, one of them being 3,360 and one being 3,361 wouldn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. You still get 3895. And the slab itself, remember the slab itself that starts our calendar here, that gets us to 3895 and connects us to 522, our calendar here starts at 1656 years. The Great Flood, 2239 BC. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. 534. I don't want to tell y'all some bad information. Just real quick. Okay. So, yeah, 534, from the first appearance of Enki and the Anuna, which is Enoch, in 3439 BC, and the Gihon flood caused by the Nemesis X object, as we've gone through many, many times in a published book, Anunnaki Homeworld, Return of the Fallen Ones, and in my videos. That's exactly 534 years. The length of this slab right here to 2905 BC. 2905 BC was year one of the construction of the Great Pyramid. Took 90 years, which was 1080 months, to 2815 BC, the year 1080 Anno Mundi. So yeah, that's how it's self-referencing. This 522 date is amazing that we found this in the pyramid, showing two different ecliptics colliding, and Phoenix and Nemesis in the same year, in a calendrical code of measurements that isolated Phoenix and Nemesis. Just can't make this stuff up. So to hammer in the importance of what you just saw, here's the chart. It ends in 2040. It ends in 2040. However, it begins with 3373 BC, which happens to be 522. Here's 522 AD, but it happens to be 522 years after 3895 BC, which was year one of the ancient world's pre-flood calendar. It's self-referencing. It's also absolute calendrical proof of time being in a cycle. All right. Where are we at on time? I got some more charts to show. 3 hours already. Wow. Wow. So crazy. So let me see here. I have another one. Let me see where. Oh, I got another chart to show you. Here you go. Here you go. So we saw that 2040 was attached to the very perimeter of the Great Pyramid. Our calendar year 2040, which we know is 138 years after 1902, which began the Great Pyramid's course countdown to the return of the chief cornerstone at the end of the calendar in 2106. So the last chart showed 2040 at the very perimeter of the structure. So with the perimeter of the structure being the focus here are all the measurements of Sir Flinders Petrie from right in this area. It's 18 inches to the passage axis conjunct right here of the two passages, which is 176 inches above the foundation of the pyramid, which is 1,110 inches to the entrance of the pyramid up here. And the entrance of the pyramid is exactly 666 inches above the foundation of the Great Pyramid. That's that vertical line. But the apophthegm is 808 inches from the entrance of the pyramid all the way to the corner perimeter of the pyramid where we found the date 2040. The corner of the pyramid, which is the foundation of the pyramid, is precisely 1656 inches from where we started our whole entire countdown at the Great Slab in the King's Chamber. Why is this interesting? Because when you add 1656 to 666 to 808 to 1,110 to 176 and to 1518, when you add all these numbers up in this simple geometrical form right here, you get the number 5934. And anybody that got their chronicons out, why don't you tell everybody else what year is 5934? Put it in the comment section if you know. We just saw in another dimension, in a whole different series of calculations, this geometry led us to the year 2040 AD, Anno Domini. What year is 5934 Annus Mundi? A totally different calendar. What year is it? Because it's the exact same year in that calendar as 2040 in our calendar, right there at the exact same spot of the Great Pyramid. And you can't make this up. There's no way to invent this. This can only be discovered. 5934. You are correct. Graybeard. It is the year. 5934 is the year 2040. Dime Bar. You too. 5934. If you look in Chronicon, it is the year 2040 Anno Domini. The Great Pyramid is self-referencing. Josephus said that the pre-flood Sethites built the pillars in Egypt and that these pillars encoded the secrets of the world in geometry. Let's go check out another chart. So here's another one. You just saw 5934 is 2040. So let's start right there. No, that's where we're going to end this time. We're going to start over here at the entrance to the pyramid. We're going to start at the entrance to the pyramid. At the entrance to the pyramid, 2965. Again, we're entering the pyramid. 26. We're entering. Listen to me. Please catch what I'm saying. In this exercise, going through time, we are entering the construct at 2965 BC, which is the year 930 pre-flood world, 930 Anno Mundi. This is the year Adam died. Adam is Adamu. The old race died. The survivors and the new race enter the construct at 2965 BC, 930, after the sun darkens, 930 AD. 930 Anno Mundi. We enter the construct, and for 1,110 years, we travel down this timeline to the year 1855 BC. If you open up your chronicons, you will find out that the year 1855 BC is a visitation of the Nemesis X object. But in the old world calendar of Anno Mundi, it is the year 2040. Everything is self-referencing, even calendars. But what happens? Once this happens with 2040, this is a 2040 event. It's the Nemesis X object. This is a convergence field. Remember what I told you about in the other videos, guys. Nemesis X is a field. When that field overlays the materium field that we're in, anything caught in the middle of that field can be pulled right out. Look what happens. A total jump of timelines. Just switched on over to another ecliptic just like that. 1855 BC is the year 2040 Anno Mundi, and here's the change of trajectory. Now look, 3,060 years up, all the way up here, and 534 more years to the very end, the back wall where we started our other calculation. We arrive at 5934 Anno Mundi, which is the year 2040 AD. On this exercise, you can go forward or backward in time. Doesn't even matter. Both of them, the beginning and the end of this whole entire exercise you just saw, is a sun darkening episode. 2965 BC, the sun darkens, the race dies. The survivors enter the construct. This whatever happens is not good, because they only survive, their timeline's only 1,110 years before they go through another sun darkening episode, because 1855 BC is a Nemesis X year on the 792 year periodicity. However, it is the year 2040. It's a cross-calendrical parallel, and it's so devastating. It changes the whole entire trajectory of their existence, and it comes all the way up here and ends in our year of 2040, which is the ancient year of 5934. I don't know what that one is. Somebody got a heavy engine going. I don't know if y'all can hear that. All right. Here's another one. So this one too. Oh, you know what? Y'all caught me flat-footed. I wasn't prepared for this chart. You guys caught me flat-footed. So I'm going to ask help from my community. I don't know what 3195 is. I don't have my Chronicon with me. It's in my other building. 3195 BC should be in Chronicon. Maybe one of you guys can put the event in the box. But it's 230 years before 2965. Here's the flat wall, the back wall of the King's Chamber right here, just like we started the other patterns. Here's the back wall of the King's Chamber, and we're counting that same 534 years. This time we're starting at the death of Adam, the death of the Adamu. The sun darkens, and the new race, the survivors, they carry on for 534 years until the year 2431 BC. Now, the reason I have 3195 BC in a square, because it's in Chronicon. You should have an event for this date. I don't know what it is. Uh-oh, Not of This World. I think Not of This World's telling me something. Chinese mopeds. Sound, man, you better stop that. No, 3195 BC. I'm gonna have to look. You know what? I'm just gonna have to look up. I'm gonna have to look it up. I'll know what it is once I see the AM date. So this is how I calculate it. 3195 minus 3895 is the year 700. Okay, I know what happened. Cain was killed. It's the year 700. Cain was murdered. You remember Cain was cursed because he murdered Abel, but Cain himself was murdered as well with an arrow. So Cain was killed in the year 700. So that's a death. And remember, Cain represents a whole nother race. Remember, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. Cain kills Abel, but he starts a whole nother race with who? The others. How do you know there's others, Jason? There's not supposed to be nobody else, but there was, because Cain feared them. Cain feared going out with the others, so they gave him a mark, and that mark was going to protect him while he was out there. He started a whole nother race. How do we know that? Because there's two separate patriarchal lineages in the book of Genesis. One of them is the Cainites, one of them is the Sethites. So here is 3195 BC, the birth of a race that lasts for 230 years. That race, some of them may have survived, but that race goes through a sun darkening episode in 2965 BC. The Adamu die now. So now we have the Cainites and the Adamu that are almost wiped out. This is way before the flood. This is during the pre-flood world, and it starts a 534-year countdown to the year 2431. But 2431 isn't boxed. I don't have an event for that date. So we just count down 1,814 more years to this event here in 617 BC. I don't have my Chronicon with me. I wasn't planning on looking at this chart. I didn't even know this chart was in here. 67 BC, I believe, is when the Assyrians conquered Jerusalem or Babylon. 617 BC. Maybe that's the date of no, that's not the eclipse date. I don't remember. Some of you guys got Chronicon out. You can look. But it's neither here nor there. Now we have 957 BC. That might be the invasion of Shishak. I'm not sure. But the real, these are the middle anyway. The real event here is 930 AD. So it starts with 2965 BC, which is 930 of the pre-flood world. It's 930 Anno Mundi. 930 is 138 plus 792. We go 534 years and then 3,000 and then 3,360 years to the year 930 AD. 930 Anno Domini of our calendar is again a message about the coming of the Phoenix and the Nemesis X object. How do we know? Because 930 is 138 plus 792. And in the chronometry of the Great Pyramid, all we have to do is add the final length before the exit from the construct. Here it is, 930 AD. Now, I know this, not 930 AD is a special event. It has something to do with invasion and war. 930 AD. I just can't remember exactly what it was, but that's why it's boxed. It's in Chronicon. But either way, no matter what happened that year, Phoenix and Nemesis X are the message here, and the sun darkening. So we count that 1,110 years from 930 AD. Again, it gives us right here 2040 AD. But this time it's showing exit construct 2040 AD. Can't make this shit up, man. Let's get B. Remember, it's all self-referencing. Remember the 204 width of the King's Chamber? The King's Chamber is 204 inches wide. The whole grand gallery ceiling right here is 1,836 inches. It's 153 feet. When you add 1836 inches and 204 inches, you get 2040. It is self-referencing. Here's another one. The top, remember the bottom is 1656, which is the Great Flood. The top of the Great Slab, this 534-inch long slab, the top of the Great Slab is exactly 1,700 inches from the base of the monument. 1,700 inches plus, that's a vertical height, plus the vertical height of the Grand Gallery itself. The Grand Gallery is 340 inches. 340 inches right there. 340 inches plus 1,700 inches is 2040. Let's see here. See if there's, I got, what I do, I did G, I think I got all these. I do believe I got all these. I did. Got that one. And I got the, yeah, that's so crazy. This one's so crazy right here. The first one we started with. So we move to the next one. Now, we're going to move to a totally different date. Totally different date. This date is wrong. I didn't have time before the video to change this chart out. That's not supposed to be 2040. That is supposed to be 2046. And if 5934 is supposed to be 5940. Well, we'll even do it on the calculator right now. But this chart starts with 2909 BC, the start of the 670 years of the 7 kings of the Anunnaki in the Sumerian Pentapolis. 670 years before the flood. This is the beginning of their reign, the perimeter of the Great Pyramid, counting 808 years up to the top, 808 inches, which is the apophthegm. We get to the year 2101 BC. So entering the construct now, entering the construct at 2101, which is a phoenix year on the 138-year timeline, the sun darkened, all kinds of stuff. 2101 is a phoenix destruction, and yet it's when this next group is entering the construct. They enter the construct at 2101 BC. For 4,146 years, from 2106 BC, they move all the way down here to the descending passage. They're now the subterranean world. This is the Nemesis system. This means this group here actually traveled along the Nemesis ecliptic. They're not even on Sol's ecliptic. This group here left during a Phoenix phenomenon episode and as a group entered another construct and they went down here. 4,146 years. That's a long haul to an unbroken historical timeline. 4,146 years to this event. Let's make sure we got the event right because they're going deeper and deeper down into the Nemesis timeline. So 2106 BC. I'm going to show you how to, just for those of you who are like calendrics, 2101 BC is very simple. So I'll go 3895 minus 2101 gives me 1794 years. This tells me that 2101 is the year 1794 Anno Mundi. It's 1,794 years since year 1, 3895 BC. So 1,794 now, which is 2101 BC, when all these new humans entered the construct and started a 4,146 year timeline going down toward the Nemesis system. We're going to add that 4,146. Here's the beauty of it, though. Remember, Sir Flinders Petrie showed us that passage is both. It's 4,134 on one side. In the middle, it's 4,140. And on the other side, it's 4,146 inches. It has 3 lengths for this long passage. So here's the longest length, 4,146 plus 4,146 gives us 5,940. Therefore, their timeline ends in 2046. If we go by the long one, if we go by 4140, which is the Phoenix number, which is what they started with, 2101 BC was a Phoenix date. If they entered and exit both on a Phoenix date, then that means it's the middle measurement of 4,140 inches, which gives us precisely 2040 AD. Hard to tell. Hard to tell. But either way, you see the value of the chart. But 2046 is not to be ignored. You've already seen how the Great Pyramid records, Mayan mathematics is very interesting. But here's David Davidson's chart showing the geometry of the Great Pyramid shows us that something very unusual about our world is going to occur when this timeline is over and finished. And the timeline that he found in the Great Pyramid ends in 2045, and he wrote this in 1924. And he had no information on the Nemesis X object, no information on the correct translation of the Mayan long count. He had no information whatsoever on the Phoenix phenomenon. He derived this from his own chronographical research and the geometry of the Great Pyramid itself. It's right here. 2045 AD is the final year of the Great Pyramid's geometrical longitude of perihelion. Longitude of perihelion timeline. Perihelion means closeness to the sun. Vapor canopy? I don't know. Very interesting. Very interesting. So I cannot make up a single date on the Nemesis timeline. I can't make them up. There they are right there, 3439 BC, the appearance of Enoch and Enki. I can't make that up. 1855 BC right there is the year 2040 Anno Mundi right there. We showed that. It was in the pyramid. I can't make that up. 522 AD, I can't make it up. These are all spaced perfectly apart. I can't make up 2046 and 2106 right there. Remember, when the Nemesis X object appears in the sky, it's a 60-year portal. 60-year portal. Can't make up these dates. And of course, there's the Mayan long count, which shows 2046. This is how you factor the 13 Bactans of the Mayan long count, 1,872,000 days divided by 13 epochs called Bactans, which are each 144,000 days each. Here's how you factor it. When does the Mayan long count end? Right there. It's a big whopping 2046. When the Nemesis X object appears. What did the Maya say was going to happen? An invasion of demons. Where are they going to come from? They got to be coming from another world. But there's an exchange at the exact same time in our world that many people are making their exodus from here to a better place. There's another place dumping their trash here. See, I'm just looking. I got a lot more to show, but I don't. Let me check. Let me see if I do before we go to this next section. Guardians. Okay, before we go to the next section, that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at that real quick. So remember, I've got presentations talking about the Gate of IAKSAKKAK and the poem, the occult poem Ketub. They're basically giving us the business. So here's the Necronomicon, Book of the Mad Arab. Remember, the Necronomicon quotes whole portions of the Era Epos and the Enema Elish text. And we're told often, oh man, Jason, you're tripping. That's fantasy. That's all bullshit. That's all crap. And yet scholars have isolated whole passages of the Necronomicon that came straight out of Near Eastern texts. So Necronomicon, I have found fear. I have found the gate that leads to the outside, by which the ancient ones, who ever seek entrance into our world, keep eternal watch, whose name is writ in the terrible Magan text. Magan is an ancient Egyptian name. It's a Magan. Magan was a name for ancient Egypt. I think it's all capital letters. I think it's MA.GAN. The testament of some dead civilization. Man is the key by which the gate of IAKSAKKAK may be flung wide, by which the ancient ones seek their vengeance upon the face of the earth. What is new came from that which is old, and what is old shall replace the new. And once again, the ancient ones shall rule upon the face of the earth. This is what we see in the book of Revelation, the 7 kings. There shall forever be war between us and the race of Draconis, for the race of Draconis was ever powerful in ancient times when the first temples were built in Magan, that's the Great Pyramids, and they drew down much strength from the stars. If the gates are not kept always locked, bolted, and barred, then the one who is always ready, the guardian of the other side, IAKSAKKAK, will enter and bring with him the hordes of the armies of the ancient ones. That's Mayan prophecy. That's the book of Revelation too. It's also the in the writings of the Christian mystic Charles Burgoyne in the 1880s, talking about the dark satellite. The covenant was given to seal the gates between this world and the other, the gate forgotten, by which the ancient ones ever seek entrance to the land of the living. Remember what Charles Fort said? He thinks that we were alive once, but something happened and we had forgotten that we are now ghosts. And it is said that some of that race lie waiting for the ancient ones to once more rule, that they may be given the right hand of honor, and that such as these are lawless. This is what is said. So, while there is an exchange, as we discussed in the prior video, there's a massive exchange of men and materials. When the Nemesis X object appears, there's a whole new field overlay, creating a massive interference pattern like a dimensional envelope between worlds, where all kinds of things that were previously impossible are now possible within that envelope. It lasts for 60 years. It changes biospheres. It changes races. Everybody born during that period has fundamental changes. And then out in the 60th year, when the Nemesis X holography pulls away, when there is a separation between the arithmetic of these worlds, of these constructs, according to how you are resonating, you will either stay in one world or you'll be pulled into the other. Because you're going to go with whatever world you're resonating with, which leads us to our next file. Well, actually, we don't have a file. We have something I'm going to share with you. All right. So I know many people. I'm a critic of Zecharia Sitchin. He's a uniformitarian to the core, and but I have to defend him, just like I defended Billy Carson against Wes Huff's BS. I'm just going to tell you that he didn't make up Nibiru, and there's a lot of critics and people say, "Oh man, Nibiru's a bunch of fantasy." No, in the 1890s, scholars were debating about the existence of Nibiru. Not that it existed, but what the hell it was. Some said it was Jupiter. Others said it was Mars. Others said it doesn't have a planetary designation, and all the planets are accounted for. It's something else. It's more like a phenomenon, Nibiru. So I'm going to tell you what it is. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to wrap this whole presentation up with this. But here's an actual prophecy from an Akkadian text. It's about Nibiru. When Nibiru grows bright, the king of Akkad will go to preeminence. When Nibiru grows bright, there will be foods and rains. When Nibiru culminates, the gods will give peace. Troubles will be cleared up, and complications will be unraveled. Rains and foods will come. The amount of crops with regard to the cold will be out of all proportions to the amount of cold on the crops. The lands will dwell securely. Hostile kings will be at peace. From the scribe, Nigel Itzhur. So this is clearly a prophecy of a future time of peace and prosperity caused by the appearance of the Nemesis X object. But nor is this the only reference to such positive prophecies. Zecharia Sitchin painted the picture that Nibiru was going to be very, very terrible. But it doesn't say that in the Akkadian texts. So, Nibiru, for all intents and purposes, is our Nemesis X object. We have to remember what the purpose of Nibiru was. Zecharia Sitchin did get some things right. He called it a planet, but it's not. How is Nibiru actually described in the Akkadian text? It's called the fairy. What does a fairy do? It moves things between places, maybe shepherds souls between constructs. Nibiru is a fairy. That's all its purpose ever was. And depending upon your perspective or where you were at, Nibiru was bad or Nibiru was good. The Nemesis X object. So Nibiru is also referred to as the place of the crossing. So we have a phenomenon in ancient Near Eastern texts. The Nemesis X object is returning in 2046, and it serves the purpose of being a fairy, but it only does that at the place of the crossing. What did we see on the ancient American iconography, the little pictographs? We saw crossbars, single cycle. The Mesoamerican sky watchers were looking for the crossbars. We saw the doomsday glyph. We saw the pyramid and the eye, the observer, the watchers. They're waiting for something to be ferried. So even the Great Pyramid shows the crossing. You saw the crossing. What's in the middle? 522 AD, when our timeline began, when Phoenix and Nibiru were here at the same time, the only time. That's when our timeline began. Our timeline began with the Dark Ages. So Nemesis X is a fairy. It's not a planet, and it's probably not a super construction. It is literally the overlap of constructs, and the 60-year overlap is what is the gate. It's the Gate of Rostau. It's when another world overlaps for a period of time with our own world. We're in the Kingdom of Seker. Those of us in the Kingdom of Seker just want to go home. Winema, the way home. Through a deity that's a portal attached to a pyramid, the chief cornerstone, the stone the builders rejected, the Phoenix Gate. Every bit of it fits perfectly. Every bit of it is tongue and groove. It fits absolutely perfectly. We've been looking at all this the wrong way. The structure of the Great Pyramid was built by Enki. It was the EKUR, the divine mountain. It contained the tablets of Destinies. Later on, tradition called him Enoch. Enoch's ministry was for the last days. The last days is our time. Because he came out of a cataclysmic world, which was nothing but the very world that we're waiting to be destroyed, because we're on a cycle. Which makes sense as why the oldest, most magnificent, and most mysterious architectural structure this world has ever seen was mapped out in inches and feet. Doesn't even make sense otherwise. Nibiru is the fairy. During the 60-year period, though I've showed you on many other charts, show how the 60 years gets abbreviated to 40 years and this time is short. It's all a matter of perspective. It all has everything to do with your personal frequency. Your frequency is going to dictate your world. You're not going to be existing in this world with all that. The negativity is not going to touch you. You're going to be pulled into another. This is the Exodus. Remember, the whole Great Pyramid is structured out in 2448, 2448, 2448. It's the Exodus number. The Exodus in the Old Testament was in the year 1447 BC. And what happened? The Israelites, it's just a story. It didn't really happen, but the Israelites escaped an evil world. What was that world? It was Egypt. What year was it? 1447 BC. Anybody got the chronicons out? 1447 BC was what year? It was 2448. What did Patrick Jernick in the Orion prophecy, Patrick and Gerald Ratniks in the Orion prophecy discover? They discovered an ancient Egyptian text that showed that the number 2448 was the number of cataclysm in ancient Egypt. But we know it's the year of the Exodus. And we know that the Great Pyramid is patterned in 2448. showing us the Exodus. We also know that the 204 years from 1902, the last time the Phoenix appeared, 1902, 204 years to the return of the chief cornerstone in 2105 is exactly 204 months. 204 years. And 204 years, I believe, is 2448 months. I got to verify that before I lie to you. 204 times 12, 2448 months, showing 1902 began the exodus of souls. Hence why the 20th century was so violent and so many hundreds of millions of people were executed, died, exterminated, genocided. 1902 began the exodus of souls from the construct. What do we find in the 5th seal of the book of Revelation? The altar of God. The altar is full of souls, and they're told to be patient. The time is short. Because the next one is the 6th seal. What is the 6th seal? It's Mother Shipton Sky, 6th Sky Dragon. It's the year 2040. The 6th seal of the apocalypse is the return of the Phoenix in May 2040. Every bit of it fits perfectly. I don't have to make anything up. Just all fits perfectly. So we have Nibiru, the Nemesis X object, literally fulfilling the mechanism of Exodus, providing us the Gate of Rostau. The gate is exactly what you expect it to be by however you're living your life. For the type of beings that are nefarious and evil, they must hate living in the Nemesis construct. Because they're always trying to get here. They're always trying to get here and rule. But according to the prophecies, we're in the Kingdom of Seker. We're in hell. And it's these cataclysms that provide us our exit into the other constructs. And the Great Pyramid is nothing but a map showing us the ingress and egress points when these happen in different timelines. That's my presentation, guys. I'm done. This is longer. It took longer than I thought. I'm getting hot. Turn my AC on. Kind of loud. Yeah, this when I found 522 AD right there at the axis conjunct, and then I calculated backward and forward and found all those points, I was like, there it is. I missed it all these years. I missed it, and there it is, right there. It all feel perfectly lockstep with everything we've been talking about with the convergence field, with the dark ages being about 300 years of vapor canopy. Everything we've been putting together in the last 6 months in Archaix is summed up in this video. Now we understand what the Great Pyramid really is. The Great Pyramid was truly mapped out for a future event by a technologically advanced civilization that used inches and feet. Yeah, and they did it for us because we are them. There is no difference. No difference at all. Yeah, man. So you can get in Archaix Underground. We got over 2,830 or 2,850 members. It's growing. Archaix Underground is the social media for truth. You don't have to follow Archaix research. Man, everybody's in there. All kinds of people doing stuff. And we're having a blast in there. Archaix I'm about to upload some more stuff tonight. I do have an announcement. I had told I think 2 of my moderators or admins, but let's see, we're on week 5 NFL. I'm about to do week 6 NFL predictions. I think we're going to open the door. We're going to open the door and allow just a few more, maybe a dozen people. We're not trying to get overwhelmed. We're already 340 deep. We're already 340 people deep. But we've got people in the Cypher group doing predictions on crypto, doing predictions on everything you can imagine. So many people doing predictions on sports, all different, doing business predictions, personal predictions. We're having a blast. It is an absolutely successful venture, and I appreciate your participation. There's a lot of people in the chat who are in the Cypher group, but we're already at the 9th iteration of the software, I believe. That's 9 times we have upgraded the software based off users deal. So I think we're going to open it up, maybe 12 to 15 more people. I'm still thinking about it. But because I've gotten at least a dozen people asking me, you know, they're pissed off that they missed the bus because they've been hearing about what we're doing in there. But other than that, oh, I hate these pop-ups, security pop-ups. All you want to do is sell me some malware. You want to sell me something that's supposed to protect against malware, knowing you're going to infect my computer to make it look like it was worth the money. I ain't trying to hear that. Okay. So that's it, guys. This is 3 hours and 45 minutes. I might get on X later. I'm definitely going to get on Telegram. I got to get some predictions done for this weekend's NFL. I'm so glad I got this video out. My God, I knew I was going to wrestle with it. I could have done the charts so much better. But I was so excited about getting this material out. And tomorrow evening at 6 p.m., I'll post it later on this evening. We have a special guest. Forbidden Archaeology's Michael Cremo will be on the channel tomorrow. Can't wait to talk to him. Great book. I read it about 15 years ago. I have a copy right now. I'm going to show it on screen. I have a copy right now. But Michael Cremo will be here with us in studio tomorrow. Going to have a great chat with him. We have an awesome lineup, as a matter of fact. Totally awesome lineup. Let's see. Oh, as far as Chronicon goes, I know a bunch of you received your Chronicons. I also know that a bunch of you are about to wait a week because we were overwhelmed. Did not realize how many people were going to order Chronicon all at the same time. So Cheryl and Big John kind of got overwhelmed, and they've got a whole bunch of packages already made up. People's names are already on them. The T-shirts, stickers, thumb drives, whatever else you ordered has already been put in those packages, and we're just waiting for the publisher to send more boxes of books, and we'll throw them in the packages and mail them off quick. Don't worry about it. You're going to get it. You guys just kind of overwhelmed us. You got yours, Lala Kelly? Pat Morgan, you got yours. That's good, man. Chronicle's an awesome book. I'm signing them all. Jeff, I am signing every single one of them. Yeah. Whew. That video there. That was hard to get through that one. If you guys are interested in the Great Pyramid stuff, don't neglect the playlist. I have a Giza playlist that literally goes into all this stuff. Oh, so some amazing stuff in there. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and hit this outro. I cannot believe how long I've been on this video today. Love you guys. Anti-establishment historians tend to be an unpopular lot, and my own works will undoubtedly serve to reinforce this attitude by those who have published garbage adorned as history. It is my intent to make enemies, to topple their cherished pillars, to silence those charlatans who have sold their fictions off as facts. My mission is to educate those willing to know. I have no doubt I will lock horns with many along the way. The materials that I offer in my books are for those who are unafraid of the dark, who want the truth undiluted, direct. The ancient past, behind the scenes happenings throughout all time periods, censored histories, the academic cover-ups, real facts about race, religion, subversive societies, and even predictive systems of analysis by which future events can be known beforehand or uncovered and explained. Archaix is for the public domain to come to a place where they can receive information that has not been diluted. It has not been censored. You're not going to like some of the things you hear. Some of the many videos are going to tick you off. They're disturbing. The core things that we have been taught since we were introduced into this world have to be peeled back layer by layer by layer for us to fully comprehend the absolute medium of deception that we are totally immersed within. Our world is not what you think it is, but it is a beautiful place. It's all a matter of perception. But where we've been in the past in the collective, as a species, as a race, and where we have traveled in the past up until the present, in our personal lives, has everything to do with where we're going. One who is properly informed is not easily deceived. The fact that so much energy has been expended in covering up the truth about our past can only mean that, though we are blind to it, we must be such a threat to our controllers that burying the past was the only recourse they had in maintaining their power. Or, said another way, we are more than we suppose ourselves to be.